the completion of downtown crossing phase 3 already enabled another developable site there, so that we hope to probably put another bioscience use there as well. So you're going to see a lot of that over the next year and or two, and hopefully we'll be coming back to you for a lot of other complementary requests from the Board of Alders, for LDAs or CSEP approvals, or and obviously to accept funding. And so that's sort of a broader overview. I mean, I think Mike mentioned a little bit the strategic corridors, which really ties into a lot of the stuff we're doing in an innovation corridor, but that's things like the State Street redesign, again, which is enabled primarily by state money. That's to redo the whole of the downtown, I guess we call downtown State Street, so say from Trumbull to George, and that is now underway. Phase 1 was completed earlier this year. Phase 2 should be getting underway. That's the section closer to the heart of downtown. So you're talking, Chapel and down to George. That should be getting underway very soon. Now we've already selected a contractor, and that's enabled both with state funding and a required city match as well. So that's sort of a broad overview. There's many more projects. I would also say within our division is also because they don't have a carve out for. They don't have they're not spelled out here separately, but and you'll hear from them later. Is our Department of Cultural Affairs. We work closely with them on what is called here land and cultural equity, and that's not only supporting the land bank efforts, which I think you all are pretty familiar with, the $5 million in Urban Act funding to create a land bank, which is now up and running, allows us to do property acquisition in a way that we haven't been able to do so before, but also implement the cultural equity plan, which encompasses things like Black Wall Street, which is now up to over about 150 vendors, I would say, on the green, and it's a real big step forward for that for both commerce on the green and obviously Black and brown focused events. So we're really proud of that. And then I think you'll also you'll hear more cultural affairs, but that also includes some Alders grants that they get out there, cultural vitality grants and that sort of thing. And so so I guess the big picture, I think, and I wrap up because I know I'm sort of going on here, but I see some of the big projects, and I think Mike touched on them, is Armory, Union Station, which I didn't touch on, and Mike may get to that in the housing because he talks a little bit about housing, but Union Square, I should say, which is the former Church Street South. Again, we're talking the potential for thousands of units, mixed income with a significant affordable component, as well as things like Union Station, which was directly across the street, is enabled by the $20 million geothermal project that our Office of Sustainability was able to win. I hear that maybe moving in the right direction again as far as funding. And then in the Union Station, we're talking on the west, what we call the East Lot, which is the lot closest to the police station. You're looking at a large mixed-use tower with a parking garage as well. And then on the west side, which is the side where the rental cars are, we're looking at finally getting our multimodal station set up. So these are some of the real pillar projects that you're going to see, along with things like Contact Place that I touched on. So that's some of the work that we envision working through the next year's budget.
Thank you. And before you continue, let me just recognize our colleague, Alder Richard Furlow, who has joined us.
So no real, as you see in the budget documents, no real significant driving changes on the line items for economic development. The special fund grants are all articulated in the special fund section. The capital budget was presented at that hearing. There is an accounting position that was originally over in the finance department, but will be technically moved with the person who now works in our department, supporting a lot of our special fund grants, supporting the entire division. But the position you will see articulated in the presentation deck is an add to the 724 budget should the Alders approve it. We very much appreciate that. I just close by saying, I think, we're not, presenting status quo from like the way we've always done things either. Together with the board, we recognize the headwinds that are coming at New Haven. You see this, we're kind of keeping a tracking chart on impacts related to tariffs or federal policy, federal grants and impacts to the university, and just the general temperature around immigration in a welcoming city. So things like our pre-capital account, which will allow us to think of new strategies to make sure that we can deliver on these projects. In prior years just sort of blended in the background of our budget, but now become really, really important. for private equity sources, if there's no federal grant available, like just figure out all of the above. And the early read from the staff is very encouraging, thinking creatively, particularly our housing team, which, you know, created this unique, focused housing team to deliver on housing, even if the tried and true sources, you know, may not be as available to us as before. So we'll pause there, and you know, either Shannon or if there are other questions.
I just wanted to point out that I talked about the increase in the personnel costs. I was looking it up as you said that. We did have the accounting position, which is part of that $113,000 increase under salaries, and that position is around $77,000.
76,959,
Yes, it is.
according to the budget.
Yes.
Okay, is that it from you all? Well, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you for pointing out that was one of the questions I had. Just to remind our colleagues that our packets that our staff prepared have summary documents, and in the agency 724 economic development, the number of positions for this proposed for next fiscal year should be 15. That's a move of one of the positions from some other organization into EDA, and that is that accountant position that we just talked about. So that's just a little snafu in our paperwork, and then there'll be another correction that we'll talk about once we hear from TTNP. Okay, so now we'll take questions from colleagues about the general fund budget proposal for EDA. Also, there are capital budget proposals as well, which are listed in the summary document that our staff provided. Questions from colleagues? Questions from colleagues? Alder Honda Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed you mentioned about the innovative business growth. How does that affect the 9th Square area with the businesses down there? I didn't hear much you saying anything about that.
So Ninth Square, really interesting changes are happening in the Ninth Square. Many people remember it as an old warehouse district, which became much more residential with the Beacon, the Ninth Square Residents at Ninth Square project as a real neighborhood of the city. Go figure that the two downtown markets are both going to be located in the Ninth Square proximate. So exciting to see that there's a real spend power in that district. But then also, we've got a significant job space in the Ninth Square. Not only the Knights of Columbus or you know, some of the buildings that have been there forever, but like 55 Church Street. The owner of 55 Church Street for many, many years had that building simply as government offices and back office type of stuff. And now some of those innovative bioscience companies have moved in there. One opens next week that has this neurological imaging equipment that will transform neuroscience treatments in many, many years forward. And that is a nice relationship with what's happening up at the hospital, say Rayfield's campus, with the neuroscience work as well. So, I mean, I think in many ways, a place like the Ninth Square is always regenerating itself. And we do what we can to support with the Cedar Park. We put a little bit of capital support to support Jamal and Change the Air Foundation at Cedar Park. They were out there for 30 nights last year. And it really created a sense of warmth. People came to the district, spent money elsewhere. And it's a good example of where, you know, your support allows us to put a little bit of extra so that they can, you know, overcome, you know, they were out there, they built that themselves. Not a lot of contractors that could afford that. But we were, you know, we were all able to just put in a little bit, and then they created something really special for the city.
Thank you. My last question for you, being that we're talking about the downtown project, I noticed that there have been some new businesses that have came in, stores. What are your plans to bring in more stores that will accommodate the residents here and visitors in the city of New Haven?
So one of the hardest things to do right now is support storefront retail. So as the alders know from the many, you know, events, marketing, repositioning to get out there to support our storefronts. We've been out there with specific team members, our neighborhood commercial district team, to help the businesses we have with both the leasehold program, the 50/50 program, and facades to make sure that we're presenting to a wider audience than the tighter network, if you will. That is, I think, is our most important thing we can do is to really, strengthen the ones that we have, like our flower shops, smaller markets, create a great environment around them. We counted all the stores, so everyone went out about a month or 2 months ago, every district, everywhere in the city to see what the storefront vacancy rate is like. And with the notable exception of Dixwell, healthy, 85% up in storefront occupancy, we have work to do on Dixwell. So I think all the projects are great, what we're seeing happening with new developments, but our vacancy rate of storefronts is something we need to work on. And we will see some focus on that this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going back to the 9th, 10th Square, it was mentioned that there is a building that's supposed to be going up, but I think I read somewhere that it's not happening or may not happen in the 10th Square.
So I think you're referring to the article in the paper the other day.
Yes.
So no major new construction on the commercial side is forecast in 2026. The economic headwinds are significant, from the interest rates to construction costs. We'll see some small things happening. That project is fully designed. It's going through our city plan commission. The building permit's been filed and reviewed. So the moment will happen for a project like that, but it's not happening on the schedule we hoped it would, which would be construction this year.
Okay, and it's mainly due to federal funding as well, if I read correctly.
I think there's never one factor, right? It's, you're hearing a lot about this with the tariffs. Like, it's one thing to say the tariffs, but then it also creates a risk on investment if people put money elsewhere. It's like that. Like, so the tenants were not ready to move because the construction costs weren't insured. So, it's not one factor.
Okay, thank you. Also, on our sheet that we have, there's these operating subsidies. What is Macy's subsidy? Just $35,000 new. Just curious what that is. And if you could touch on actually maybe all of them, which is also the Canal Boathouse and the Visit New Haven.
Sure. So first with a point of honesty. So I was going through the budget to prepare for tonight, and I'm like, what is the Macy's subsidy? I believe, and we'll check this afterwards and get clarification for you, I believe that goes back to the Gateway Community College project downtown, so just some legacy account of some sort that's never been cleaned out of the old budget documents. There's no Macy's, there's no current subsidy for Macy's, and we'll clarify that for you. But I had the same question. Visit New Haven is the account that we put together with your support a couple of years ago to support the inbound air travel to New Haven, or inbound passenger rail. So the new Amtrak trains are coming out this year. So that really provides an opportunity for people to come in through Amtrak. And then the 2 airlines that we have down in Tweed. So to really support the inbound moves, advertising in Nashville or Atlanta, some of the cities where people fly in from, is the Visit New Haven account. And there was one more last one.
Canal Boathouse, how could you forget that one?
I know. Well, it's not as front and center as it was a couple of years ago, right? Where the boathouse was a real concern of ours. What you see there in the operating subsidy account is now balanced with the UNH lease monies, which is coming in, as well as a more healthy event schedule. So we're stable at the boathouse. And very much, there'll be a point a couple of years down the road when we don't even need that subsidy anymore. Right now, it also helps with the community programming, because we made a commitment when we built the boathouse, as to have the rowing programs, it's got to have sailing. None of those programs are making any money, and to just bolster it, we put in, a significant amount of that subsidy directly goes to support the rowing and community programs.
So a lot of those programs have just begun as well. I think the sailing
they
has
keep trying,
just,
right? So sailing is really promising, because the rowing was hard because of they go at 3 in the afternoon, and the waves are all over the place in the afternoon in New Haven. So the sailing seems to be really popular, and hopefully that will stick. We're going to put in this it's like a dock of some sort, like a little temporary thing that allows the sailboats to get in the water a little bit easier. And so we hope the sailing will be the trick to support the community programs.
Okay, is the hope to someday that this be like an enterprise fund, that it just runs on its own without us having to put additional general fund money into it?
Yeah, so we're putting, have you done engineering yet at Parks and, okay, so,
Yes.
oh, you've done CAO. We're meeting with CAO quite extensively about how to operate the Lone Wolf waterfront. And the boathouse may be part of that mix to figure out, run it with the concessions, so you get an economy of scale, that sort of approach. And we'll know more as the year goes on about how best to operate the Lone Wolf waterfront.
Okay, and then just to clarify, the Visit New Haven, which increased from 150 to 200, that's us paying for the advertisement for?
There's a staffer, there's the advertising, there's some people we fly in like, key influencer type of stuff. That's sort of the approach with that budget.
I guess the question, why are we paying for the advertisement? Why isn't the airport or the airlines or, you said even Amtrak with the passenger rail, why aren't they picking up the tab for?
With a lot of, so it's most in our interest, right? The airlines got off the ground with the outbound travel because so many people go to Florida, we're traveling out. We have to work harder to bring the inbound, which is the overnight stays. It's a really significant economic benefit to the city. Anyone who stays overnight is a big benefit. So last year we did advertising for the Black Wall Street Festival because it was a nice weekend event and we did see marketing work there. We'll keep moving, it won't break overnight. It'll be years down the road before we see this inbound move. And it generates an incredible amount of economic benefit because you roll up the hotel nights, the restaurant stays, so that money comes back to the city.
Are we tracking any of this data as to how it has impacted our economy here in New Haven? Do we have
I don't have it with me,
Yeah.
but through the EDC and Connecticut Lodging, we can get you know about some of the success stories.
Mr. Chair, I think that's important
So
for
noted.
us to see. Thank you. I will yield to my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues on the proposed general fund and capital fund budgets for the Economic Development Administration? I just have a couple, if I may. $400,000 in the capital budget for land and building bank. That just begs the question, how is the land bank funded right now? And why did you settle on $400,000 as opposed to 300 or $1 million? What was that thinking behind it?
So land and building is a commercial industrial account, which we've had for many, many years.
It's not the land.
Not the land bank,
Which
which
is
is the
separate
$5 million, right? This account supports a couple of things. One is the acquisition of key properties or financial support to properties on the physical development side. So it's a very important account for us and, provides us an opportunity. Let's say, I think one year when we were doing 101 College Street, we actually had to build like a sheeting wall to protect South Frontage Road, they called it a SOG, like a SOG. So that SOG was $130,000, and the only way we could support that was a fund like this. So, there's no grant out there to fund a sheeting wall type of thing. So this is what that account is used for.
Thank you for that. Acquisitions, $205,000. That's property acquisitions, like sliver lots and things like that, or what kind of rolls up under that?
Yeah, so that would be exactly what you said. Like if there's an a good example right now is there's a property downtown that's a really nice housing site, but because of the way the downtown properties are set up, there are one or two smaller properties that make sense to round it out. We might want to be early in an acquisition there through our downtown municipal development plan, and this is the type of account we would draw from.
Great, thank you for that explanation. And then finally, downtown crossing, $450,000. I believe Deputy Ezagire was talking about the next phase of downtown crossing. Is that what this account is for? To provide the city match for future funding for big development?
Yeah, so we have at the COG a $20 million grant reserved. We need to finalize the design and then assemble the matching funds to make sure that we can move this project forward. And this would be for If you're at 101 College Street, you walk out the back door, the plaza's there. The next site, which supports a pretty good sized building, needs to be paired with the infrastructure work, and that's what this fund will go to.
Thank you. Appreciate those answers. Further questions from colleagues? Economic Development Administration. Seeing none, we thank you for your time.
Okay,
And
thank you
we
very much.
proceed with city plan, next on the list. Which Alder DeColo, Mr. Vice Chair, says is page 10 in the deck. I'd like to recognize our colleague Alder Evelyn Rodriguez, who has joined us. Oh, there's more paper.
Would you like us to do the handing out? of the
Yes,
paper?
let's do the paper first. Is there more we might share?
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Here's a pen.
That's 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8.
You need more?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, the papers are all passed out. Names and address for the record, please.
Shannon Q, 295 Orno Road, Waterbury, Connecticut.
Here, you take mine, Dawn. Always make more copies than you think we need.
Sorry.
That's okay. He'll make more copies than you. You gave your name, address, your agreement.
Certainly. Good evening, Laura Brown, Executive Director of the City Plan Department. Oh, sorry, 262 West Rock Avenue, New Haven.
Hi, everyone. Esther Rose Weiland, Assistant Director of Comprehensive Planning, City Plan, 126 Edward Street.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
We are starting on page 10. Again, with the mission and the form chart. And I'm sure we'll hear all about the 25-26 goals, and I know that the printout will speak to that as well. So you'll hear more about that in just a moment. And then on the city plan budget side, the budget went up by $26,383. Most of that was from salary increases through collective bargaining, and there were some slight increases in overtime as a result as well. And then some $3.3 thousand increase in rental and contractual services, which is essentially inflationary pressures. And then there are $870,000 worth of capital projects, which are outlined on page 13 and 14. And I will pass the mic over.
Thank you. Good evening, Alders. Very pleased to be able to present the budget to you tonight to the City Plan Department. As you can see, our total request is for $958,487. And the majority of our budget, as you know, is for staff. To give you some orientation to the work that we do, the org chart kind of outlines some of the primary buckets of our work, but we do oversee the 3 land use boards and commissions in the city: the Historic District Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the City Plan Commission. And this past year, those boards and commissions hosted 42 meetings, and all of those involved many hundreds of applications that were heard before the commission that involved our staff's time and technical skills. So we are a busy team. We are currently a team of 7. And in addition to the work that we do to facilitate those commissions, much of that work is actually work that involves working closely with other departments, and Director Hospitelli mentioned some of that work, convening the other departments that are involved in the development review process throughout months before it's heard by a land use board and commission. So we serve kind of a coordinating role and a facilitator role for many other departments in the city. We also are the touch point for development projects really from their conception. Very often developers will come and meet with us to talk through the zoning or permitting pathway for a project. We also have staff that conduct the environmental assessments and review, which is often the very first step in the process. So we have a lot of touch points in addition to once the projects are approved. going out and making sure that what they're building is what they got approved to do. So that's then on the zoning enforcement end, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. So that is all to say, we are a staff-heavy budget and we are a hardworking team of 7. Currently, we are down 2 staff right now. I'd like to go over just some key goals that you'll see, and if I could draw your attention to the Word document that I passed out, that's a little bit more comprehensive than the slides that you see in your slide deck. So one of the grand accomplishments for this year that's listed in our accomplishments sheet here is that we are wrapping up the Vision 2035 comprehensive planning process, which seems like it just started. But Esther Rose Weiland, who is here with me, has really been leading that process and engaging many of the residents across the city. I hope you've all had an opportunity to be involved in some way. We do have one last workshop likely coming up and public hearing processes that you'll have an opportunity to participate in. Obviously, that will go to the Board of Alders and the City Planning Commission as well. But it's been an extensive process with lots of engagement, and we think we'll have very exciting goals to present to you that are aligned with the work that's already been happening in the city and the things that you all have told us you'd like to see. So in terms of our goals for this coming year and what we hope to do with the money that we are requesting of you, I'd like to just touch on a few within our kind of buckets of work. In terms of administration, we have been working to professionalize our staff. 2 of our staff now are certified with the the Connecticut Association of Zoning Enforcement Officers, which is now required by state statute. We also have staff getting certified as floodplain managers and certification with the American Institute of Certified Planners. So we appreciate the support that you've given to allow our staff to get trained, professional training. We've also been working on ensuring that the permitting and zoning process is clear and transparent to the public, making modifications to that. And we're very much looking forward to a new permitting system being deployed that will allow us to digitize our all of our permit applications. That will be an exciting thing for residents of the city and for staff. In terms of planning and technical service, I mentioned that we are wrapping up Vision 2034, but it doesn't end when the plan is done. That's just the beginning, because then becomes the implementation of everything we hope we will have in place in the next 10 years. So we will be implementing working groups to implement the plan in the fall. And a big part of implementation of any comprehensive plan is the zoning ordinance, which is actually one of the major tools that we have at our fingertips as planners, and the city has to deploy to really help control what we want built. And the zoning ordinance was last overhauled in the mid-1960s, and there was a very different vision for the city at that time, which was very focused on motor vehicle transportation and parking lots. And we did a good job of building those. But what we're envisioning now is a different kind of city that has more mixed-use neighborhoods, kind of rebuilding some of those neighborhoods that had been in place prior to the highway construction in the 1960s. And so we've started that, obviously, with Downtown Crossing and some of the other work that we're doing already. But the zoning ordinance is one tool that we can use. And so we do envision starting an overhaul of the zoning ordinance to align with the goals of the Vision 2034 plan. I also want to mention zoning enforcement because I know it's an important subject for all of you in your districts. We play an important role in zoning enforcement, and we work closely with the many other departments on enforcement, including building department, LCI, health department. And our approach to this from the city plan perspective has been, and my approach is that if we can put more time and energy into making sure that people are compliant with the regulations from the start, we may in the future not have to do as much zoning enforcement. And as an example of this year we organized 2 very successful workshops for our local historic districts to educate residents about what the requirements are of living in those districts, what resources are available to make modifications to their homes in those districts, and how we can support them. And that's a strategy that I envision
deploying across the city as we start the zoning overhaul as well, not just in the local historic districts, but in other areas of the city. Lastly, I'll touch on project management. We have 2 senior project managers on our staff, and in the past, they've been focused primarily on infrastructure project management, including downtown crossing, and the boathouse development was largely our senior project manager staff. We are now working on the Mill River Imagine Next project that Michael Scatelli mentioned, which is a huge geography, but will also include a lot of great redevelopment across the commercial areas of that district, including trail development, and we'll be serving a leadership role on that project, as well as a DOT-funded grant that we have received, but not yet received. We have heard we've received it, and we hope we will receive it for the Reconnecting Communities project, which is a planning grant focused on the I-91 design. So that is what I really wanted to highlight in terms of our budget, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Before I hand it over to colleagues to ask questions, I had a small point of clarification. You mentioned near the outset of your remarks that there are 2 vacancies. I think you said we're a hard group of 7 people working, and there are 2 vacancies. That adds up to 9.
Correct.
But there are 8 in the budget, so is one of your people special funded?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, the environmental review position is a CDBG funded Planner 2 position.
Okay. So in terms of vacant positions right now, the deputy director of the zoning position is vacant.
Correct.
And what other positions?
And that Planner 2
And
position.
that Planner 2 position. Okay. Thank you for that. All right, so I'm going to open it up to colleagues on the committee to ask questions of our city planning department. Questions from colleagues? Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's actually regarding the license permits and fees. There are some items that look like they have gone up. Is that correct? There are, it looks like 3 items for city plan: the review of administrative order or decision of zoning administrator from 250 to 350. Certificate of appropriateness within historic district, 110 to 250.
I will have to check on those fees because I don't believe I made any changes to that.
And just for colleagues' sake, it's in our budget books and license.
Thank you. I'll get back to you with that information.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Festa, do you mind saying those again?
7-1
Are you in the budget book or?
in the budget book. And it's, 7-1, right there,
Gotcha, city plan department.
the very first.
All right, review administrative order from 250 to 350. Okay, thank you so much. Yes, it looks like there are changes proposed in the budget book.
And then you answered my question regarding number of employees that Mr. Chair already asked. Can you touch a little bit on the capital projects that are listed, the coastal area improvements, on-call planning, Route 34, Farmington Canal, preservation and planning?
Yes, is there anything in particular you want me to describe?
Well, coastal area improvements, those are usually, I know you come before committees regarding continuing with, to avoid flooding, et cetera. But,
Yeah.
if you could touch, what is the on-call planning?
So on-call planning covers planning services that we're not able to conduct in-house. So that would be things like we have a planner, a very technical planner that works on coastal impacts and inland wetland impacts, and we consult her when there are projects that are highly technical in nature and we don't have in-house staff with the technical skills to do that. That would be something that we'd use on-call planning for. The zoning ordinance overhaul, we're planning to use that fund for on-call planning. And then some of the follow-up to our Vision 2034 comprehensive plan, which is labeled here as neighborhood strategic plans.
So the hope was, when we initially wrote this, that we would get another grant that would allow us to do some more in-depth community organizing at the local level, at a really neighborhood level, to create neighborhood plans. We'll have to scale that back with the limited funding that we have, but that's the vision.
Is that 2 million?
The grant that we had applied for, which was a HUD Pro housing grant, to do that was, it was a total of 7 million, I believe, and only 1 million would have been for that effort. Yeah.
But the total, are we just missing, Mr. Chair, we're just missing a comment here.
You're talking about 2635 on-goal planning, 2 million,
It's
that maybe an
200,000.
extra zero.
Okay, so it's 200,000.
Yeah. It's just a typo. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out all the time.
Um,
I'm sure the city plan department would welcome a
Yeah,
10-fold
10 million would be
increase in
perfect.
that capital
You
allocation.
wish it were.
But alas, they're not going to get it.
You're wishing it were just a comment that was missing.
Yes.
Okay, that's very helpful. So it's 200,000. Regarding the 2034 vision, I know you have been working very diligently on it. I hope everyone has taken I'm pushing for you for the survey. What has the outcome been, or how is it going with responses to that?
We had over 1,600 responses to the survey, and our goal was 1,300. So
Oh.
we're really pleased, and thank you all for your support with getting that out. Yeah, and the public seems very supportive of the goals that have been drafted so far in the process.
Great, congratulations. That push has helped. Yeah, and regarding the 2034 vision, I mean, there's a lot that we want to do, right, as a city, which is great. But what is, I guess, realistic? You know, there were all different categories in the survey between affordable housing and safe routes, et cetera. And the cost to it, because there is a cost now in the budget, and then we have to look forward to other funding for further. Is any of the capital going towards any of those initiatives?
I mean, there are definitely ongoing initiatives that continue to be supported in the plan. I would say, the plan really serves as the guide. And then, we look to departments who have department heads who have done extensive review, and community partners who have done extensive review of the plan to use that as kind of a goalpost for what grants should we be applying for. We know these are the things that the residents of the city want, and that's what we're going to go for. So I'd say in future years, you should look to our budget to include some of the implementation funding for the plan. But certainly it should appear in budgets across city departments as well.
But we're looking more in the future for capital budgets versus this one.
Yes, although there are things in the plan, like I said, that we are already budgeting for, like Mill River and some of these existing infrastructure projects that are ongoing.
Okay, yeah, perfect. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. I'll just quickly observe that the comp plan and the zoning does a lot to shape what kinds of privately funded investments and projects get approved. So a lot of it has to do with how much private investment are we going to have in the city as well. Certainly infrastructural investments, roads, bridges, parks, enabling projects like dealing with the connector, that's a lot of public money, but most of the construction work that's happening in the city of New Haven is privately funded developments, housing, and other kinds of things. And so the zoning regs determine what's allowed where and what the sizes of will be. And so part of what we hope for is that this plan looks really good and it helps continue to attract private investment in New Haven because a lot of building is happening. Thank you for those questions, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues of our city plan staff, our hardworking and very busy city plan staff. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
We will proceed with the next departmental workshop, transportation, traffic, and parking. Mr. Vice Chair tells us that it's page 19 in the in the city's presentation. And I just want to point out for colleagues before the staff speak that we got a stapled packet from our staff. One of those sheets had errors in it. So there is a unstapled transportation, traffic, and parking sheet. That is the correct CT&P sheet, not the one that's in the stapled packet. Hayden and I found some errors, which Don very helpfully corrected. So for your reference, use the transportation, traffic, and parking sheet that was not in the stapled packet that was set aside, okay? Names and addresses for the record, please.
Shannon McHugh, 295 Orwell Road, Waterbury, Connecticut.
Cindy Busser, Director of Transportation, Traffic and Parking, 42 William Street, New Haven.
Garrett Hoffman, Deputy Director of TT&P, Win Curling, Alaska, Connecticut.
The floor is yours.
Brief. It's just the general overview. It is the same as it is for all the mission and the org chart for review. We'll hear about some of the goals and initiatives for FY26, including Vision Zero and other initiatives. And then in terms of the budget, this was one of the budgets where we did have to make an adjustment for calculation, where the salaries were correct in the budget under the personnel sheets, however, it didn't carry forward into the expenditures. So these numbers might be a little bit different than what's in the printed budget, and it will be handled in a budget amendment. I just want to let you know that ahead of time. But based on what's in the PowerPoint, the calculation was corrected. So you can see that the total budget increased by $323,982. There were $552,000. There was an increase in salaries, and that was driven in large part because of the 4 new positions for parking enforcement officers. Those positions are revenue generating, and so we can talk about those details as we go. You'll also see there was an increase in overtime as a result of some of the salary increases for collective bargaining. And then the other increase was rental and contractual services, which we've seen in most budgets this time around because of a lot of inflationary pressures. So that explains some of the variances, and then you will see that we have on page 23, I didn't give page numbers, but on page 22 and 23, there is a $2,950,000 capital allocation, and there are a number of projects that we will go through and answer any questions for. But that is a high-level overview, and I will pass the mic on.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to present our budget ask. So I'll just kind of reflect on and step back and talk a little bit about our organization, our department, and what kind of work we do. I'm pretty sure everyone's aware of it, but I look at it a little bit more in terms of we fall somewhere between what Public Works does, which is day-to-day operations on a very large scale, and also what engineering and city planning does, both from a planning and engineering perspective. So putting those things in those two buckets, we have a very busy year ahead, and we've had a lot of work done in the last few years with the passing of Safe Routes for All, and a lot of the parking management and enforcement work that we've been doing in the last, since the last capital cycle, and all the improvements that we've made in terms of improving our infrastructure, both from our transit side, our parking enforcement, parking systems. But really key things I wanted to talk about are, at least for a future look here, is that, we are all aware we are going to be launching our Vision Zero red light camera program soon. So right now it's going through approvals with the state. So we're really excited with, obviously, Board of Alder's approval and, with all the support from the state and trying to implement that, later this fall. The other thing we wanted to also focus on is these are the 4 buckets I put in. If you look at the slides, there are 4 buckets here, which is safety, mobility, connectivity, and quality of life issues. I will focus more on the safety and quality of life because those are one of those key things that we focus on and we deal with day-to-day stuff, which is both on the transportation safety side and quality of life related issues with parking enforcement and operation stuff. So moving forward, at least with the passing of Safe Routes for All, again, with all your support 2 years ago, we've had a lot of success recently in the last 2 years with two major grants from the federal government. One was a smaller grant for about $400,000, which we are looking to implement now in this fall. And then late last year, we received $11 million to completely replace all our aging infrastructure and improve safety along Chapel Street, and all the way from downtown into, going to West River and into West River. So very excited about that project and also sort of nervous with the conditions around, at the national level, but we're very hopeful that that project is actually going to move forward. So a big ask from our capital budget is a portion of the funding for the match for that project. The other big thing I want to sort of, again, focus and highlight is I want to just give a little clap for our staff here, which is our crossing guards who do a tremendous amount of work in the field to support the safety of, school children, our parking enforcement people, our staff who actually work around the clock pretty much. I would say our job is like 26 job, not a 24/7 job, but still 20 hours a day for about 6 days a week, to improve quality of life issues, address quality of life issues, especially on enforcement, and improving safety, because that is a big part of focus of our parking enforcement team. And then a big shout out again to our traffic operations team, the signs, the signal crew, the street light crew, and the parking meter crew. They are out there all the time trying to address all the issues that come through different channels, trying to address these things all the time, trying to make sure they're addressed in as fast as possible. So, for example, last year we had a signal that was knocked down on College and Chapel. Our staff worked overtime to get that fixed in overnight, which is a tremendous sort of level of effort that, which is, I would say it's not possible anywhere else, because the amount of damage, the amount of the types of things that we encounter in terms of addressing these things on a day-to-day basis. We've had issues from all the marshlands, for example, lights going on flash and signal gets knocked down. Our staff are out there, rain or shine, trying to get these things fixed. So that is a big focus of our overall goal. And again, transit now with we're trying to improve our bus shelters across the city. This is like across the city, and then with the ongoing upcoming BRT project, and that's an additional scope that we are also going to have to sort of plan for the future. But we are working with the state to sort of address some of these issues, because their partnership is also important. So because our funding, city funding, only takes us so far, right? We have to work with our federal partners, state partners, to find that funding so that we have a bigger match from them to support all the ongoing programs and initiatives we have. One other thing, again, I want to thank the Board of Alders for supporting us on the microtransit program. Right now it's free, so we're doing really well. I mean, we have a lot of support and a lot of demand for microtransit. On Monday, we'll be launching service to Tweed. So we're excited about, resolving some of those issues in and around Tweed in terms of traffic congestion. So our department really has a lot of, fingers in different things here. So we work on demand management side, parking management side, enforcement, operations, planning and engineering, and implementing projects that come out of Safe Routes for All and other types of plans. So I think a lot of our funding requests are aligned and sort of centered around these major sort of buckets of tasks or areas, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to convince you giving us that funding that we've been asking. Just in terms of the capital allocation, I'll just go briefly over some of those asks. So last year, I want to kind of acknowledge the board for supporting us 2 years ago in funding to replace all our parking meters, a majority of parking meters. So that was a major capital ask after 20 years of life cycle. And we have now, a decent system out there where all the meters are working. That creates this ripple effect of generating revenue. And I think want to acknowledge your effort and in supporting that. So parking meters is one of the asks here. So the current ask for parking meters will support that ongoing thing and bring it back to those levels that from previous years in terms of operations and maintenance. So that includes replacing batteries, broken down meters, or modems or communications and all kinds of stuff. So general maintenance of parking meters, because these are all then touch screens and bunch of stuff. So that is what our ask for $40,000 for parking meters is for. Signals, traffic control signals. I cannot, I cannot state this enough, but the signals are the most expensive component of our program. City has 330 signals, and I think I've said this thing. It's not bragging rights, but the city has more signals than that state of New Hampshire. So, and we've done some audit about four years ago when I started this job to study funded through SCROG, and approximately at least 65% of our signals are more than 80 years old. And this is really like we're doing a band-aid job day in, day out. And that is where I want to acknowledge our staff's efforts, right? They are this technically skilled staff who can manage these aging infrastructure and keep them still alive. And, for example, the intersection of Chapel and College, those you look at those aluminum signals, those signals that are aluminum buckets, those are like from 1950s. And, and we are basically on borrowed time, but we do our best to kind of do more with less. And one of the reasons why our ask is about $450,000. So this does not include just a signal, right? It's the controllers and, again, dealing with some of those inflationary costs these days. Today, a signal project costs roughly about $1.5 million just to replace one signal, depending on the ranges, somewhere from $1.1 million to $1.5 million with inflation. And that's the cost of at least 3 houses in New Haven, right? So, but again, federal dollars go a long way. That's why we're very thankful to our federal partners to giving us $11 million, right? And I think, but we still need to demonstrate that we can build these projects and bring our aging infrastructure up to, modern, because they are, first of all, out of standard, but also structurally very deficient. The other thing I want to focus on are street lighting. This matches our previous capital ask, so we're not asking anything more in this thing. Our streetlights we have 10,000 streetlights that our staff manage. So this is a team of 5 people who manage 10,000 lights across the city. And these lights are in different shapes, different types of lighting, different customization. And, so this ask is ongoing to support that existing ongoing operations and maintenance. The other category I want to focus on signs and payment markings, and I will say this, that we're asking for $400,000. This includes funding to do all the regular operation maintenance around payment markings. So last year we did $600,000 worth of payment markings, just last year. That includes not just maintenance from cyclic fix or some of those asks to upgrade our crosswalks and center lines and edge lines and all the parking stalls, but it's also to help support the ongoing payment, every year, the ongoing repayment. Because once it's repaid, we have to, and now with Safe Routes for All, one of the biggest goals is to leverage an opportunity to add bike lanes, additional bike infrastructure, improving crosswalks. In the past, we were just doing, low standard, we've increased the standards in terms of doing our crosswalks. So now we're following all the federal guidance, especially on high visibility crosswalks. But those are very expensive items. So, and this year we spent close to we actually spent $300,000. We still have $300,000 worth of work that we could not finish at the end of fall, that we'll continue doing it in, spring because of the weather. So, and, so that's where signs of payment markings, and then obviously signs that are down, parking meter signs, traffic control signs, all of that is part of the signs and payment markings, budget account. The other thing I want to highlight is Vision Zero. Here in Vision Zero projects, this is, in the past, it was roughly about $100,000. This year our ask is over $1.1 million. The reason that number is so high is partly because this is part of the match for the Chapel Street project. So this is only half of the match to go through design and maybe phase one of construction in 2027, 28. So by the time we'll be done with the NEPA, final design, and going into getting that, contractor on board to do the project in phasing. So that is the $1.1 million ask. That's for the match. The two other items, one is enhancements. I talked about all the bike lanes, active transportation improvements that we are also tasked to do. This includes all the, active transportation infrastructure, including bus shelters. For example, last year we spent twice the budget on bus shelters than the year before, approximately 20. This year. And this year is not over yet. We spent roughly about $22,000 just to fix our bus shelters. And, we are working with, Connecticut DOT is generous enough to actually fund a program to improve our bus shelters. And moving long term, obviously, with the BRT project, we'll have new infrastructure for for bus shelters. But, this enhancement supports all of those ongoing maintenance and operations, and new bike racks, and pavement markings, new crosswalks for new bike lanes, and new bike infrastructure. And the other thing I also want to focus on is this year one of our biggest focus of quality of life is accessibility. So all of our signals, especially our signal infrastructure, a very simple example is does not have any accessibility features. So we are trying to upgrade them, and that includes audible signals, right? So people with with visual and audio disabilities, so that they have the right cues to cross. So that is a big effort from us. Again, 330 signals. Some of it is we are leveraging existing projects to include that infrastructure in there, but that transportation enhancements is part of our strategic goal to improve accessibility for, especially for pedestrians and bicyclists. So, and the last thing I want to focus on, planning engineering. This is about $200,000 for us. This supports all of our projects that we cannot do in-house. For example, last year we initiated 3 projects to do two-way conversion. One was for Chapel Street. There was a study that was funded through SCROG. But as a follow-up, we did design work, traffic signal design to hire a consultant to do the work to design these for the corridor projects, corridor level. And this planning engineering services will support those kind of projects that our staff do not have either the expertise or the level of the resources that we can use time-wise to actually do these projects. So so that is our ask overall, overview of our capital ask, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We'll now have questions from colleagues for Transportation, Traffic, and Parking. Alder Friedel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. This was a really good presentation. Very well done. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't have my book in front of me. And so I don't have the positions for those of the red light camera that we approved. Apologies, I don't know where we stand with that in this budget.
We can give you an update. That was a approved as part of last year's budget.
Yeah, that position's filled.
Filled.
The approved position is filled. That person is working in our office. So we're moving forward with that program. That position is filled.
Okay. Can you give me a very, very, very high summary of what they're doing currently?
So, as I mentioned, right now, there are 2 staff members. One is a technician for the signal, technician that will support when we start implementing the program with the vendor. They'll work closely with the vendor to address all those ongoing issues with it. So that person just recently started. So that person is getting kind of oriented with all the electrical stuff and all the work that we do on the signal side. That person is currently supporting a signal team because our program hasn't started yet. So in fall, that person will be dedicated to that, for the Vision Zero automated traffic enforcement program. The Vision Zero traffic engineer we hired last year has been supporting us in actually getting the plan approved. So he's been working very closely with me in actually developing the plan as we went through after the ordinance and the plan was developed in-house. We sent it to OSTA, Office of State Traffic Administration, and they sent us some comments. That person is actually working on, actually fixing the plan and trying to, address those questions. Moving forward, that once the plan is approved and we start the program, that person will start working on the planning and project side in terms of, because statute requires us to use that funding to kind of actually start implementing projects to improve safety and processing. So that Vision Zero, Dimitri's started, he came from Canadian DOT, amazing talent, and he has a lot of broad background in planning, transportation planning, urban planning, and also both traffic engineering, and great asset. And we're looking forward to actually using his services to, work on projects from Safe Routes to School projects, Vision Zero projects that come out of Safe Routes for All plan, including supporting me on the Chapel Street project as we move forward. So he will be tasked with working on all the safety projects as we move forward, in coming years.
Great. You're expecting this to get started, I think you said 2027?
The plan, so we are working with OSTA to address their comments. They had a sizable amount of comments, but our goal is to start the program this year, whether it be a soft launch, because we are also working on some marketing effort to kind of not just build our website for the education side, but also to kind of do the outreach before the program, before the proverbial green lights turn on, right? So we want to make sure that we're working through that effort in advance of the plan being approved. And the other thing that we've also made progress on this is the procurement side. So we have a vendor on board, and we'll be coming back to you with more information about it. But we just recently selected a vendor through an RFP process, and that vendor will be obviously doing some additional work with permitting related stuff and, field visits and all the other stuff. So that work is also progressing in parallel with all the other stuff that's happening.
Okay, thank you. Just one last question, Mr. Chair. The money that's been allocated there's a lot of signs missing throughout the city. They're hit or they're faded. Can't read what they are. Does this also include street signs? There are street signs missing everywhere.
It includes every sign. So we did an audit, just before my time. This was way back, this is about 5-6 years ago. We had, at that point, roughly about 300,000 plus signs. And that does not include our parking meter signs, some of those signs. This just includes our traffic control signs, street signs included. And this is where we face, like I mentioned earlier, we're doing a lot more with less, because as every project progresses, there's more and more of those signs, right? More street lights, more signals, more signal related equipment, like bicycle signal, right? Like that's a new technology, a new paradigm we're moving into. And our work basically supports all of that stuff, street signs. And again, our staff do a wonderful job, especially even with the stuff that's not funded through this, the amount of effort that they do in actually doing the project, for example, street naming signs, right? I mean, it's funded through a separate account, but really like, it's not just about the dollars and cents and fixing stuff, it's about the amount of initiative and focus that our staff have in doing these things. That cannot be put in dollars and cents, you know? I mean, we are all working, you know, we're working down, you know, government versus consulting is quite different, but I mean, I look at it in that way. It's the value proposition our staff bring in.
Everything to us, Director, is dollar and cents. You can believe
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But just one final question. The pedestrian crossing signs, is that also in this budget?
It's
And
part of the signs.
would you expect there to be more? I'm talking about the blinking ones where you can press the button and it says pedestrian crossing in some of our dangerous intersections. There's one on Fountain Street. I think there's one on the Yale campus, the Elm Street. There's one there.
There's
Are you
one here in
expecting
City Hall too. I mean, there's one near College Street.
I think that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Is this included to add more of those signs?
Yeah, so there's two things here that we have challenges, to be honest with you. All of our budget is mostly for operations and maintenance. So our ask, usually a very small portion of money we have is leftovers actually installing any new stuff. So, but we are still working through to kind of like, you know, find funding sources, also use some additional funding that we have.
Well, this would have been in capital, right?
Yeah,
Sorry.
capital.
So those pedestrian crossing would be in the capital.
Yeah,
funds
it's
also.
probably capitalized. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Thank you for your presentation. It was great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Ferraro. Alder Ferraro Santana. And after that, he is open.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was very enlightening. I see here that you have 2 part-time positions. Have you filled those yet?
Yes, we actually have 4 in our current ask is 4 parking enforcement officers full-time.
4 full-time?
Yeah.
So you do not have part-time?
We do not have any part-time officers. I think there must be a typo on the slides. I just corrected it before I came, but I think that was something left hanging there.
Thank you.
All set, Alder Ferraro Santana?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Next on the queue is Alder Festa, and then the queue's up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions regarding, you know, the traffic enforcement officers. I know that, you know, the buzzword is they create revenue, but can you give us an idea of what percentage we collect of infractions versus the percentage that are actually appealed?
I have the idea, but he could give you a lot more detailed information.
I don't have that percentage of that is appeal. Appeal is running about 4 to 5% people who appeal them. Currently, right now, in this fiscal year, we are about collecting about 50% of what has been issued so far this fiscal year. So an infraction that's been issued between July 1st and March 30th of this year, 50% of those have been paid.
And how do we go about collecting the rest? Because we're talking 3 positions that you're selling to us as revenue generators, when in essence, they're generating some revenue, but not to its full potential.
Yeah, so the enforcement officers, that's out of their realm, that the collection part. So some other systems we've had to bring back online. Matter of fact, starting this week, we once again have Connecticut DMV registration lookouts. So we're going to be able to send out more accurate late notices. At the end of this month, there's going to be a lot of people are going to get surprises in the mail that they have tickets and owe tickets. So we are enhancing our collection efforts through those means. We're also enhancing it through enforcement, where we're starting to look for folks that have multiple tickets and owe the city in excessive amounts and removing those vehicles from the street. We're doing those as we find those vehicles in violation now. We're not doing wholesale towing, but So we are doing efforts to increase our systems and increase collection efforts.
I remember, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this was last year's budget. I remember one of the challenges, because I think I asked whether the traffic enforcement is being done outside of even just downtown, because it seems like it's always in the vicinity of downtown. And I know, with Director Isel, we've had conversations about, hey, I have a spot where you can make a lot of money, but I never see anybody down there. And the challenge was, we don't have enough cars.
So I will speak
Am I remembering that
I think
correct?
this is where we are actually landing at the right place with the ask that we have. So Eric will explain a little bit better, but typically our operations, our parking enforcement operation is all for metered spaces. So over the last few years, right, I mean, we had a downturn in number of staff and then now slowly trying to pick up. And then at some point there was that COVID thing, we started to get out. Now, last year, this year we issued more than 30% more citations than last year. And that's with the existing staff that we have. We still have one position still to be filled that's going for CSB, certification this week. But even with the staff that we have, they've issued more than 30% more citations. The other challenge for us has been that, now we have the downtown enforcement with metered parking and all that stuff, which is a core focus of our effort. And then hospital area. We still do sweeps in the neighborhoods. It's just challenging for us to have dedicated staff in those areas because unlike other departments, we do not operate at the district level. So we don't have a district, PDO for this ward, who can actually, that person can actually stay there. I mean, the other challenge is obviously for them to have a vehicle, but in the first place, we do not have the staff to actually station them in, let's say, hey, you just stay, your beat is only going to be West River, right? Or your beat is only going to be East River. Because their core focus day long, all the time, most of the time is in downtown, for parking enforcement and meter spaces, downtown and outside of downtown. We do have two staff who do split the city into east and west. Only one person at any given time, just one person who has to cover all the east side of the city and all of the west side of the city. And what are they doing? What they are doing is we get all the secret fix requests, right? So that's what they're attending to. They're not actually going out there actively doing, enforcement in 2 hour zone here or 1 hour zone there, or even RPZ stuff. They go there when they get a complaint around the violation. That's where we are now trying to move our operating model a little differently with the ask that we have, where we will have these dedicated staff now spread a little bit more. So now instead of one person taking that extra pressure and stress about dealing with half of the city on any given day, and half of the other guy goes to the other person. Now you will have extra support now to do those additional types of enforcement that you're talking about, like the RPC zone enforcement and 2 hour zones or 1 hour zone enforcement, on top of the other stuff that that comes through. So it relieves relieves the pressure on existing staff, that the two people who have the cars can actually go east and west. Now, but again, that will still not solve the problem, but at least it helps relieve some of those complaints that we receive. Or the other thing that's happened with our staff is we have added mandate, right? Like the street sweeping comes into play. Then we have snow. So our staff, that's why I want to reflect on the amount of effort that they have, amount of things that they have to take on at any given time. Is now you have street sweeping, we have to find coverage to move them away from downtown enforcement or even the east side enforcement or west side enforcement go out and do street sweeping. Now, then you have summer, right? You have the beach traffic and then you have airport traffic. So there's different types of sort of situations that our staff have to deal with, and I think, and then you have Westville, the music bowl comes in, so the ball games and all that stuff, so those special activations. So it's like, but we do, I mean, I'm not stating that our staff don't do enforcement if they don't come across, but their focus is on the day-to-day they're always in go mode, right? So versus there's very little time for them to like focus on saying, hey, today we will do all the routes in East Route to do the RPZ enforcement or any other types of enforcement, or we'll go to West River or Quinnipiac Heights or even Fairhaven for that matter. So that is our primary ask for those 4 positions really. So now they can spread, we can now still have the downtown enforcement staff focus on what they're doing best, and then have these additional staff actually do those types of enforcement in, the 30 watts, right? So that's outside of let's say 20 plus watts.
Before you follow up, Alder Festa, I was looking for a convenient moment to recognize our colleague, Alder Jeanette Morrison, who has joined us. Did you want to address the question that Alder Festa just asked? Anything to add to what the Director Asola said?
I think he covered it pretty much, but yes, you are exactly correct. We want to shift away from a bit of our current enforcement model. Our current enforcement model is based on people walking. So with this ask, we're going to divide the city into thirds, east, west, and central. Each one of those thirds will be issued a parking enforcement officer. They'll have their own dedicated supervisor. We will be juggling resources as far as vehicles, but right now we think we should be able to cover it with what we have, but we'll deal with that when we come. But we're going to have 3 dedicated people during the day that will be dedicated specifically to neighborhoods, or at least a third of the city, where they can look at those issues such as cars parked on sidewalks, next to hydrants, too close to corners, those things that we just don't catch when the folks are walking.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that is the goal you wish to have, provided these positions are approved, or is that something you wish to do anyway, because there is one vacancy? Did I hear that? Or
There is one full-time vacancy, but it doesn't change our resources to change the way that we're doing business now. We need the additional resources to move forward, because we have folks that we're going to pull them off of, we're just moving them from one aspect of the job to another aspect. It's a resource optimization problem.
Okay, I bring this up only because I'm sure all of our neighborhoods face folks that park to the corner. They're over the crosswalks, affecting line of sight with pedestrians as well as motor vehicles. And most recently, I was part of a Strong Towns webinar that discussed some of the challenges that we face. But there's only so much we can do as alders without the department helping us to, I hate to use the word punish, but people need to be made aware of that. So if this is something, okay, it's food for thought. At least you provided us the information needed for us to have conversations on that. Another question, Mr. Chair. Cross guards. I know that that's a big request. We have, many schools with kids also that walk to school, many neighborhood schools. How are we looking there as far as vacancies? And I know that at one point we chatted about, even hiring the refugees from Iris, which has worked out.
So I think crossing guards, it's a little bit, they are under immense pressure. Again, crossing guards, huge shout out. They work up to 90 hours a week, and for the salaries that they're working and the amount of stress that they have to deal with, angry parents and angry motorists all the time, during very stressful time with drop off pickup. We've had a good team of people. We have a great crossing guard supervisor now. She's amazing. She's very good at managing stuff. But still, there's still a challenge, right? So we've had, for example, we've also, in the past, we were juggling people. We were trying to move one person from other place. We still do that a little bit, but it's not as bad. But still, the resource, we've been thinking probably for the next year, we'll probably have to come up with some game plan. But typically, from my understanding, right now today, we have one crossing guard for every school. There may be one or two places there's probably one, sort of roving crossing guard that one or two schools here and there that has the two people, but really, yeah, I mean, your expression was like pretty obvious, but one crossing guard typically is very challenging. Um, but they do a phenomenal job. The other challenge for us is hiring itself is challenging because the process takes a bit longer. They have to go through all the background checks and everything. And the other challenge for us is some of these people, some of these staff who actually do a phenomenal job, they have to like, from a career progression perspective, they are obviously after a few years, they try and transition to a different job. And, we always support their career growth. For example, Yar from Iris, he was here and then we have, Faraz, right? Faraz from Iris. Yar came from Iris. He was our AA, but Faraz came from Iris, and he was on the news and was probably more popular than any of us here, right? And people loved him. I mean, he was such a phenomenal crossing guard. And again, obviously, obviously he had to look forward to something else, and he got a job as a salesman at a car dealership, I believe. But I mean, it's always challenging. There's a turnover. And many of our crossing guards. One thing I want to mention is have been like legacy crossing guards for decades now, and we've had some. Unfortunately, we've had some turnover. Some of them passed away. For health and just age. So we are always looking to kind of hire more crossing guards, and hopefully next year we'll come with a plan to like enhance that our resources on the crossing guards.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mr. Chair, I just found one more question, if you don't
Please.
mind. This one is in regard to meters, because there is a line item here for parking meters. So we have meters and we have kiosks. How do you determine what goes where and what is cheaper and what makes more sense?
So they're pretty much the same cost. So in terms of cost wise, the business model, everyone knows, everyone's prices kind of thing. So the industry itself is, because the same company that may sell a kiosk also sells single space meters. So the prices are pretty comparable overall. The way we cite these things is it's a little bit more strategic. So, for example, if there are accessible parking spaces, right? We do not put a kiosk there. We put a single space meter because we don't want someone who has issues walking or anyone to kind of go to a kiosk. We also try and put these kiosks in areas where we think that there's high foot traffic, but also we also try and consider the demographics of the people who are there. Like if it's a lot of aging population, we try not to put a kiosk because number one, obviously mobility related issues, even though they may not be, officially having a placard, and also like technology, right? They have to understand how to use those types of kiosks. So we talk to our meters technicians there on ground and very well educated about it to kind of like work with them to plan around how to create these kiosks. There are some pros and cons. We do also install kiosks where we know there's no active construction, because if you do have construction, you have to do meter bags and stuff like that, or postings. So we try and avoid putting kiosks in active large construction areas. So for example, near City Hall, we have those kiosks, but let's say on Yale campus, it's only select areas we put those kiosks so that if they're always constructing something. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Festa. Alderman Condon-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify just a couple of questions that Alder Festa had asked in regards to parking enforcement officers. How many full-time parking enforcement officers you currently have?
Well,
And how many part-time?
7,
And you looking for 3 more,
yes,
full or part-time?
full,
3 full.
1 supervisor.
How many of those officers work the downtown area of the hospital?
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah, it's 8 walking beats is covered at any one time.
All 12.
Yeah, the enforcement model is based on, this is, I brought, show them to me.
I understand that, here you go.
Yeah, so it's primarily that, anywhere that you see a metered area are primary enforcement areas. And then the city's split in half, east and west.
You just told Alder Festa that you wanted to hire 3 more to distribute in other areas to form east or west. What hinders 3 of these officers from doing that?
Because they already have to cover their existing areas. So the areas that they cover now are based on the fact of how far somebody can walk. If we stretch those areas, then we're gonna then stretch those enforcement areas, but they're not going to be as efficient to cover those areas.
Okay. So none of those areas, those people over there have the vehicles?
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Panza.
Quickly, do we have our own marking equipment?
We don't do marking in-house. My understanding is at some point, we used to do it like decades ago, but now we have a company that pretty much works across the state with spun state contract that does all the paper markings for us.
That's usually done in the evening.
Usually done in the evenings and night, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Panza. Further questions from colleagues? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We'll proceed to our next department, equal opportunities. For those of you, which is page 3 in the presentation that our staff has provided, just for folks who are following along, we are halfway through our departmental workshops related to the EDA, Economic Development Administration. And then we have the Board of Ed at the end. So we have the equal opportunities next, then the building department, then LCI, then the Board of Ed. That is where we are in our agenda. Thank you for coming. Please, names and addresses for the record. And you brought candy, my goodness.
It's the end of the night.
It'll have no effect on our decisions or our budgets, but we're grateful for the kids.
Shannon McHugh, 295 Orland Road, Waterbury.
Nicole Jefferson, 373 Hill Street. Lisa Wilson, 15 Graceful Road, Waterbury, Connecticut.
The floor is yours.
Okay, I'll be brief. Page 3 is just an overview of the Commission on Equal Opportunities, including the org chart and mission. Page 4 is the goals and initiatives, which we will hear more about in the department. And then on page, for some reason there's a page missing. Page 4, there is an overview of changes year over year. So there was a slight increase in salaries, collective bargaining increases. There was actually a reduction in allowance for travel, increased by $1,000. So overall, the increase to the budget was $1,818. Other than that, it was fairly status quo. So I will hand the microphone over.
Good evening, Alders. Thank you for having us. As our budget director said, our first goal and initiative is always to strengthen local hiring through CEO enforcement, through inspections, of course. Last year, we did 2,655 contractors were inspected for construction, monitored over 460 sites. So that includes the new project on Chapel and State Street and all the others that you see around town. We oversee all the projects. We also oversee the 25% New Haven resident hiring on projects. And we try to work with Yale, trying to get the PLAs in, which are project labor agreements, so that we can have other folks coming in that are union. But the 25%, I think, is very interesting. If you came in the front door today, they're doing the roof repairs on City Hall, right, with the scaffolding. That's GL Capasso. Currently, they have 5 people on staff, and all of them are residents, and they've been interviewed. So I think that's good to see that on this particular building, our residents are working, right? So we also do standardized enforcement with requirements. There's also an inspection of that, saying that they're all happen to be minorities in all residents. There's also standardized enforcement and workforce. So we met with, last year, 619 contractors in our office, which is a lot of companies that are working across the city, equaling $242,112,346. It's an incredible thing to say that you've got 619 contractors working in one particular year. It also includes the year prior. Because remember, construction generally goes 2 years, 18 months. So the year before, we had 681. So right now, we're enforcing the laws for both sets of contractors that are working currently. And the staff under Mrs. Wilson here also audited over 10,000 certified payrolls. So the people that are working there, we get every payroll for every contractor. 10,000 payrolls were actually audited. So I think that's a big accomplishment. And again, when we're doing standardized, every contractor gets a prevailing wage package, which tells us their folks that they're hiring and what they're doing and where it is and how much the contract is and such. We also are expanding community outreach and job readiness programs. Mrs. Wilson and Mr. Ramos both meet for the first time ever. I had videotapes of them going over Title VII and laws and for the Civil Rights Act, and also the State of Connecticut General Statutes 46A with ASL. That's our first time, and it's on the website of the city, so that when people are feeling that they're being treated differently because of everything that is happening, they can go to a place. They have somewhere to go. So this is the best outreach situation we've ever done. The thing about it is, it did create a lot of people coming in, more than normal, that are making complaints about being harassed or discriminated and such. So we're trying to address all of those claims in all of those cases. We also did a lot of outreach with career days with the unions. We also did job fairs across the city, which actually, it was a very good, phenomenal. We had our staff attend and the folks on April 9th, just this last month. So we're very happy for that, that the job fair and the career fair went very well. We also, on our goals initiatives, to train 500 stakeholders. As I said, we met 619 contractors. We train them when we're meeting them. So they're just not meeting us and talking to us about their plan. We're actually enforcing law and telling them what the laws are. And we go with the process and we try to train them in Section 3, the city's laws, Department of Labor, HUD, all the things that they need to know to be successful. So we did that. We also supported our Section 3 workers in targeted training. We had it right here at 200 Orange Street. Our team met with Section 3 residents. Section 3 is only for federal projects, which are for LCI and the Housing Authority. Anything with federal money, Section 3 is attached, and they have to have Section 3 workers. That means it doesn't deal with race, it deals with income, low to very low income residents in the city. So we did do a training for that, and we worked with Local 90 and all the other unions to see if we could get them placed in jobs. It just so happens that one of our residents, I think his name is Jose Perez, I can't remember his name, but he just got his letter from the Plumbers Union. So we're very happy for that success. Another thing is we implemented a new certified payroll software, LCP tracker. And we've never had that either, but we've been working with the Housing Authority and they have it. So it will help us to get it as well, so we're all kind of on the same page. And it really works well, we believe, from the reports that we've been getting from the other projects. It lists how many hours of work, how much it is. It's very detailed, I can't even go into the detail, but we're very happy. We've secured a contract with them and they will move forward, coming, I think, in 8 weeks, they said, 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. And then last but not least, we collected for non-compliance contractors. We were able to recover 41 wage restitutions. That means contractors that cheated people. We catch those as well. They short them, they don't pay them their benefit, they don't pay them their real income. And we also oversee all living wage as well for the city. So if they cheat them in living wage, that happens quite often actually. Mrs. Wilson and her team is able to recover 41 residents that got their money back. You know, they get a check and then they have to prove and come in and take a picture and try to make sure that it's all documented that they've been made whole. And then last but not least, we collected fines for non-compliance contractors. I think it was actually 13 citations was issued and we collected money for them. That went back to the general fund. I don't know the exact number offhand, but we did. And I think that's it. I don't have anything else. If you guys have any questions, we appreciate your time.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm just going to go ahead and ask before we float open to colleagues about the changes to permits, licenses, and user fees. I just looked it up in the budget book and I see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them proposed to go up. Perhaps you want to talk about that? If you want to look at them, you may. But I presume you know about that system?
Yes.
Okay. And can say more about the rationale behind it and so on.
These are the fees that have been in the budget for a couple of years now, but the fees actually have been in the ordinance since like 1964. The difference is that we increased the fees because we believe that at this point in time, since it's been on the books since 1964 and we have been enforcing it, it frightens contractors that they have to pay this type of money. When we meet with them, they get a copy of this so that they're well aware if they violate or their subs or their subs of subs tiers are all subject to the fees. And it's a big to do. They don't like it, but it's the law and we're mandated to actually enforce it. So that's the only, it's in there, it's been there for a few years now, but it's really been in the ordinance since 1964. The difference is in the ordinance, it says 1/10 of 1% for every week there are non-compliance, no matter what the contract is. That's what the ordinance says. But what we did is we separated it to make it a little bit more clear, so we weren't like hitting people for $50,000 and $90,000 for a hit. We separated to make more sense to them and more legible. That's it. Any other questions?
Well, that's all, that was my question, but my colleagues will possibly have questions as well. Thank you for addressing that. So now the queue will be open for colleagues to ask questions of the Equal Opportunity President Walker Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. So over the course of time, we have the same, or pretty much the same developers, contractors, right, that we deal with. I mean, I know it could change, but pretty much.
We have a lot of main developers. You know what the difference is, truthfully? When there were school construction projects and developers, they were like union, all union. Now the city is predominantly non-union. So these contractors that we're dealing with now are different. Many of them are different because they're not union people.
And when you collect the fines for those that are non-compliant, I'm just trying to figure out, is it always the same ones that's non-compliant?
No, it's not always the same one. And sometimes, you know, we have to use common sense when we're doing stuff. We try not to hurt or harm any small businesses as much as possible, but we also have to be equal and fair across the board. If they make mistakes, we have to call them to the carpet. And that's the money that we collected and put back into the general fund. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker Myers. Alder Quinn.
When a contractor gets a job and he hires subs, are those subs subject to the same criteria?
Absolutely. That's the way the law reads. It's just not, the prime is ultimately responsible. That's the law. And then every contractor underneath, the next level, the general contractors under, and then the subs and the lower tiers. Everyone has to meet with us. If an inspector, they inspected for 2,000 some odd inspections, if they catch someone on site without our knowledge and didn't go through, that we had to train them and all of this extra, then it's a fine. That's what happens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alder Punzo. Further questions from colleagues for the Equal Opportunities, Alder Festa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just while we're on that, with the violations, have you had to reprimand anyone or basically tell them you can no longer work for the city of New Haven as a contractor?
Well, there's a big process in that, yes. We did have a contractor that had issues, yes. Severe issues. And we had to go through our process with our board and then with the corporation council, with the administration. They have to go through their process before they can actually be to the fullest level debarred, yes. But it's not completely up to us. We just take it through the levels and it goes through the process of them.
So if there are multiple violations, it's reported and the proper process takes place.
Yes.
Is that?
And we also report it to the Department of Labor and to the state of Connecticut, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues on this topic for these public servants? Seeing none, thank you so much for your presentation and those lovely bags of candy.
Yes, enjoy. Thank you.
Next on the list is the building department, OBIE. After that will be LCI, and then the Board of Education. Let's see, our building officials coming forward. Our vice chair tells me that page 15 is where we shall begin.
Shannon McHugh, 295 Orinoco Road, Waterbury, Connecticut.
Begin on 632 Woodward Avenue.
We'd be grateful.
Yes, page 15 is an overview of mission and org charts for the department. Page 16 is some goals and initiatives that you will hear more about for FY26. And then as far as the budget summary, there were 2 new positions in the budget. The overall increase for salaries was $236,693. These were also considered revenue generating. And aside from that, the budget, there are no other increases in the budget, so it's very straightforward in terms of what drove that increase. And then there is $300,000 capital allocation for the, so I will pass that.
Thanks. Good evening. I'm just going to go over the scenario really quick and then we'll go into more detail. So I'll read it to you. The building department of New Haven issues, ensures public safety and welfare by issuing permits, conducting inspections, and enforcing city ordinances and state statutes related to construction, zoning compliance, and property maintenance. It addresses unauthorized work with stop work orders. Secures and demolishes abandoned structures and withholds permits for people that are tax delinquent. A lot of people don't realize that if you're tax delinquent, you will not get a building permit in the city. Our department also oversees the permit and licensing center, which is actually like a 3-legged stool. We do like permits for contracting and vending, for business and activities, and utilize the municipal platform. Department promotes paperless online permitting in real time, interdepartmental collaboration. Increased demand due to the Yale University's upcoming multi-billion-dollar capital plan. Department plans to scale up by hiring additional inspectors, technical staff. So with that, we have an ask of two inspectors. And these are quite technical. And we have a lot of Yale projects coming on board. And I met with their facility people, what they've committed to the city of New Haven to build the next couple of years. A lot of these are going to come in our fiscal 26. And so like, when we get the drama center, the drama on Crown Street, that's a 40-month, watchdog, basically. So we have 40 months of construction, it doesn't go in 26 when it's done, as you can understand. We have the Science Hill project up on Everett Street, and that's almost a 28-month project. And then we have a lot of other things, like Fair Street's coming out of the ground. I was over there today, and that's on. So now that project's gonna be done in 12 months. That's what you're gonna do. So now that job becomes a fast track job. So the inspectors are tasked all over the city. Stone Street is now breaking ground. Connecticut on Con Ed, Pittsburgh Avenue starting up as well. So these projects take a tremendous watch on the staff, and we also are in all the communities dealing with people who want to put decks on and any kind of dreams they want to have for their house. We also do a lot of inspections, and I brought some of that with me tonight to share, because it is a pretty large number. So I think this is just year to date. I didn't want to try to forecast past time. So we came here fiscal July 1st to date. OBA has done 5,974 inspections, and that's in the municipal program with the current staff that we have, so almost 6,000. So, and we're not even to July 1st. We have written 250 violation notices for either work without permit or unlawful acts, so to speak. We've issued 2,665 permits to date, and that's mechanical, plumbing, heating, and building permits of all sorts. Our revenue side of the department, year to date, on our total for our net profits, is $18,431,000, and that's YTD from that's only fiscal. So I'm 3 over from what we spoke to last year. I think we'll probably be around almost 19.5, 19.8 before the end of the fiscal year. With that said, that's kind of an opening for questions, but I'd also like to tell you a couple other things real quick I have in mind on the way walking up. I mean, I know you guys know we do a lot. We also do a lot of public safety stuff. We meet with the fire marshal's office, the fire department. We work, collaborate with LCI. Case in point, this morning I was out in Fairhaven with a medical in an abandoned building. Was open to trespass. So we had to write ordinances. I had to get a hold of the property owner to fence it because it was open to trespass. Tomorrow we're also going out with those other fire marshal's office and LCI to go do some enforcement in the legal department. We'll be out in the morning. So I mean, there's a lot that our department does. And a lot of times it's behind the curtain. We really realize what we're all doing these things. But again, 250 letters speak to me. So I'll open it up for questions.
If only the clapping was for us. There's another event happening in this building, of course. Thank you for your presentation. Perhaps you would like to address the permits, licenses, and fees before we throw it open to colleagues for questions.
It's not.
It's right here, if you need to refer to it.
Oh, I
It's a
thought you
whole
meant
different-
about the revenue projection.
No, license permits and fees. That's what I don't know. I just remember in years past, there was quite a discussion about the enticement of having higher fees with more revenue, but the concern that if the fees were too high, you would have a damping effect on enthusiasm to build everything.
And you got also the effect on the enthusiasm to pull the permit in the first place.
Right.
They'll just think it's a cost of doing business, cash me if you can.
That's right.
So,
and yet there's bigger numbers proposed.
Yeah,
So
well, also, we're funding. Yeah, so the overall fees, we increased violation letters to 250 last year, and I think that was relatively successful. And we're just going to keep the status quo with what we currently do for fees. With the $100, I'm sorry, 250 for the, we were $100 on our violations, we went to 250. The zoning, we're requesting to go to 250 on the zoning letters, and that is something I think that the committee's working on. That's it, and we weren't gonna do anything else with our personnel, so. Again, sorry I wasn't prepared for this one.
Yeah, I think we discovered in a previous workshop that some of the information in the book is, it looks like it's changed for next year, but it was actually already changed, and so perhaps that's what's happened here. We're gonna need, obviously, to have this information corrected, because we've had this situation where we're asking about increases in permits and fees, and then department heads are telling us, well, we're not actually increasing them, but that's what it says. So we just need to get to the bottom of it, to know exactly what's being proposed to increase and what's already been increased.
Okay, that's fair. To my knowledge, I'm not increasing.
Okay, thank you. That's not what the book says, but we believe you when you tell us that. We'll get that corrected. Thank you for your presentation, sir. Questions from members of the committee? Questions from committee members? Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Could you tell us just a little bit more about what the two positions in 185 will do?
Sure. So the additional positions were for what we call ADPOs, which is Assistant Building Plans Official. So that would be helping with additional plan review, because when we get a permit, it comes in through the software, and you have to take the plans or the framing detail or the stair detail, or if it's a mechanical plan of the boiler, and you have to use it against code, and you have to do a review. So with the other oncoming Yale properties that we have, we just need more support and warrants. That's what we're asking for. And it's very technical in nature because the building code does evolve every 3 years, and October 1st of this year, we're going to have another building code change. So it's just more technical review for more staff. That's honestly what it is. I wish I had.
Yeah, I did hear you say that. It's probably just need to hear it again, and that's what both positions will be doing.
And that's all they're doing, yes, correct.
So no one else.
Field inspectors as well. What's that?
Oh, they will be doing.
Yes, because so you guys supported me last year, which I appreciate it. We changed that position through the union and the Board of Alder approval from just a straight building inspector to a more multifunctional individual, where he can review the permits, review the compliance, and then also do the field inspections and follow-up. And it frees us up immensely, and so did your support for your part-time money. Also freed us up a lot, and I do appreciate you guys working with us on that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Further questions from colleagues for the building department? Alder Farrar Centeno.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one question. I don't see any, new projects, maybe having permits online for people to register. Is that a possibility?
New projects for people to register?
Well, if someone wants to take out a permit for, say they want to do an addition to the home, is there a way that they can do that? Because other states do have that, so I'm just asking, as a way to make it easier.
You need to do it online as opposed to.
Yeah, to actually coming into the office.
We're 100% online. You literally can take it out on your phone.
Okay.
Yeah, believe me, I would like to have everybody and anybody under the tent of the permitting center, as opposed to being on the fringe. So we try to make it as easy as possible.
Okay.
We want to work with the community. We want to encourage, compliance. It's a lot better to get compliance as opposed to chasing it later when it's out of bounds.
Right, and I think maybe more clarity to residents that it is available online, because I don't believe that a lot of residents know it. And so,
I'll try to promote that best I can.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Farrar Centeno. Further questions from colleagues? For the building department? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your
Thank you for your
time.
support.
Thank you.
We're moving forward in our agenda. Next will be Livable Cities Initiative. This is the final department falling under the Economic Development Administration. After we hear from the Director of LCI, we will go to Board of Education. Our Vice Chair has found the slide to be slide 6 on the city's deck.
Sharon McHugh, 295 Warren Road, Waterbury, Connecticut.
Good evening, Alders. Liam Brennan, 28 Elmwood Road, New Haven, Connecticut.
Can you probably?
I got you. Boy, did we hear you loud and clear.
Even downstairs.
One of these days, we'll have microphones. It won't be so sensitive. One of these days. Please.
Okay, so for the overview, we have the mission and the org chart for your review on page 6. Page 7 is the goals and initiatives, which we will hear more about. And then in terms of the budget, the overall budget increased $230,000. There's changes in personnel, which was collective bargaining, salary increases, which affected personnel and the overtime. So you can see that's about $20,883. And then there was rental and contractual services, which went up to $210, and we will talk about that. That was for an increase in professional services. And then also there was $200,000 in capital allocations, which we will get into for property management. So having said that, I will pass the mic on.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Well, better? Yeah. Thank you all. We're here to ask for support for a budget request of $1,337,854 in funding for LCI in total. This is our first request from LCI under the new organization that you all approved last year with the new budget year. And so that has LCI divided into now just 2 general operational streams that are all focused on enforcement and not on development. So we have the housing code inspection stream, which you all know very well. Your housing code inspectors who get called for emergencies when renters have an issue with their landlord or their housing conditions, as well as our residential business licensing process, which is also under the housing code stream. And on the other side, we have our Department of Neighborhood Services, property maintenance, and our anti-blight initiatives. And so we have our neighborhood specialists, who you're all very familiar with, and who do our anti-blight work under that section, as well as our property maintenance staff and relocation services there as well. So if we go on to page 7, where we have the 4 buckets, kind of our goals and initiatives for the year. Our first is enforcement excellence, and you'll see there that we have launching and optimizing our new case management system. LCI has transitioned away from the Municity City Squared platform that's still used by the building department and other departments, but we've launched the BoC platform for our inspections starting in September of last year. We are still working through optimizing that. What we're looking to have, hopefully by the end of this month or next month, is a public page where everyone can go in and directly interact with our inspection data across all 3 what we would call solutions, so anti-blight, housing code, and residential licensing. And you could just put an address and find out all the data you want on a property there and be able to track it if you have a complaint yourself. This whole platform has allowed us a lot greater insight into operations. It's helped reduce our time from inspections to order letters, and you'll see this in one of the other of these 4 parts as one of the big initiative. Our time from inspections to order letters last year, based on a randomized sample, took about 16 days between doing an inspection and getting an order letter out the door. Since September, that number is down to 3.3 days, which is part of a large part of the new platform. Another part just changes in operations that we've implemented as well. But we're still building out this whole public platform part and fine-tuning our inspection aspect. We're also looking to onboard and train new inspectors in the next year. We are anticipating level funding from HUD, which should allow us to bring on new inspectors. We're also continuing to expand the hearing officer program to reduce the backlog that we have in converting citations to assessments. As of June of last year, we only had 2 hearing officers, one of which never really sat. We recruited 7 additional officers this year. We're currently down to 6, You know, Mr. Hogan was elected to be an alder, so we lost him. We got a few folks moving. So, but we set them up now that they meet on consistent intervals throughout the month. So we know every week that there's going to be a hearing officer there to hear cases. If we get an appeal, we can hear the appeals immediately. You all helpfully changed the ordinance so that appeals for housing code go through them. And so that's all set. It's working very well. And they have processed 618 residential licensing assessments this year, 12 housing code assessments, because that's new, because that was only passed with the new ordinance that took effect in November, and a number of anti-blight. I don't have that number for you right now. So we still need to do continuous recruitment there, though, so that we have the number to meet this need and to anticipate the turnover. Next, you'll see that our goal is to streamline inspection enforcement and workflows. As I mentioned, we've been speeding up the process of getting the order letters out the door. We want to keep that going as well with doing re-inspections and issuing citations. We've cut those down a bunch so far. We want to keep that moving. This is all part of the transition process with the new platform. In terms of emergency response and support, we want to continue to strengthen our partnerships with housing providers for temporary relocation services. One of the issues we have there is we've had a lag in payments to these temporary providers. And so we're really focused on making sure that goes faster. We do have a general funds position that has opened up for an administrative assistant that should be coming on soon. That will be helping to support those efforts so that we have some more manpower on making sure we process those payments, because it's really important that we have those groups of hotels that work with us when we need to relocate people. The city is under statutory law. We are on the hook to have people relocated and pay for them, even though we can charge it back to landlords. So this is something we have to do. So we have to let our partners at the hotels know that we will pay them on time. So that's a big goal for us this year. In terms of community protection, really looking to boost anti-blight efforts. I think housing code takes a huge amount of our attention. Anti-blight is still really important, even though we've gone from once upon a time shrinking city to a very growing city. We still see blighted properties, and we still need to make sure that those processes are going forward. Our team is really great, but we're really looking to cut down the time lag between sending a notice of violation and then going to a civil citation there. I think there's a way to do that while still working cooperatively with landlords. So we'll continue. We always are trying to emphasize our continuing open dialogue with landlords, but we also want to tighten that timeline up. Improve compliance through education enforcement. We've had a number of public meetings. The last one was just full of landlords who wanted to talk about how they use the residential licensing process. It was great. We had a very robust dialogue. I think we want to keep that going so that people can feel engaged from all parts of the community with our processes. And I skipped over, expanded landlord certification for rentals. Last year, we were at about 50%, or a little under 50% compliance with the residential licensing program. We're now up to 2/3 compliance for Oracle subject properties across the city. So 2/3 of them are either properly licensed, in progress, or fully exempted because they fall under an exemption. We still have 1/3 that have not responded to us. That forms the big bulk of our 618 assessments that we have, but we need to keep proceeding against the other ones. And then the last thing is operational enhancements, which I kind of touched upon on those other things, like minimizing delays, improving data for informed decision-making. BOC has really done a lot of this. And so we're using that internally, and then we want to put that out publicly as well externally. So what you could expect to see on our public page, we put up not just the property search, but also charts, and we have drafts of these going now. There'll be things like how many blight notices of violations we've issued each month, how many civil citations for blight we've issued each month, same thing for residential licensing and housing code, the exemptions that were filed by month, the order letters sent by month, housing code violations by month and year, and assessments, that sort of data. So we've already started creating the charts, and they're ticking up automatically internally, and we plan to put them out externally for everyone else. So that's kind of what we have on page 7. And then the budget summary on page 8, you'll see that, I think some of the costs, Shannon touched upon them, they're very straightforward. I think the one that you might be most interested in is the $210,000 rentals and contractual services increase that we're requesting. This is for our relocation payments. Currently, we run through the relocation dollars halfway through the year. So we're trying to have a more realistic forecast of what the dollars are. So we've already had to draw on other streams to kind of shore up these services now. So that's what that increase is for this year. Everything else is pretty much, I think, pretty straightforward, but I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I think that's about it.
Thank you very much. Questions from colleagues for our LCI Director, Alder Honda Smith, and then Alder Constable.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Just have a question. You talked about rental contractual services to the hotels that haven't been paid. How many hotels that the city uses for temporary housing?
I think there's about 7 that we rely on like very regularly. I can't tell you. I could find you the complete number, and let you know. But I probably could tick off a regular route of like 7 that we're using a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for you.
Yes, we will follow up.
How many of these anti-blight inspections that you do on these hotels in which that we utilizes for relocation?
I don't know of any of the anti-blight, like any notices of violation for anti-blight being issued to any of the hotels offhand. Doesn't mean that there are not any, but I'm not aware of them. I do think that would be something that would bubble up to me.
I ask these questions because you're saying that we're contractual services, we're behind on paying some of them. And I was wondering if we do any inspections on these motels prior before relocating people into them?
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any violations, how many violations that have happened? Or if there's violations, do you hold back their payment for contractual services? I'm just inquisitive on that.
Yes, we do inspections, but as part of the rooming house inspections that are done by the building department. So they get to get the rooming house license, they have to register with the building department, but then we do the inspection for that license. I'm pretty sure if there are violations, then though, the violations fall under the building department enforcement. We have not had this specific issue come up, although I guess don't fully know the answer to that one. But it's the inspections we do are run out of the rooming house, run out of the building department, but we perform them on their behalf.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if we can get that information
Sure.
also?
Yes, that'd be helpful.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then, Alder Smith, to just round out the other question that you had of like whether we withhold any of the payments, we would not withhold the payments for the contractual service. I think we would see that we are obligated to pay if we house the person there, but would seek then to enforce those kind of blight violations or anything else through one of the other processes, whether it's through building department citation or through one from our building department.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Alder Ponzo's next on the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are the hearing officers, are they given any type of training? Could you speak a little about that, please?
Sure, yes. The hearing officers are trained. The Corporation Council puts together a whole training for them. What we originally did is we recruited specifically for our different streams of work. So the first ones that were recruited were for the anti-blight enforcement, and then they were trained just on the anti-blight. But what we learned was that because there's this whole appeal aspect to the hearing officers, and we have to be able to grant people an appeal before a hearing officer if they request it within the time frame, that puts us on really tight timelines. And because they have to be volunteers under state statute, we can't have them at a beck and call every 10 to 15 days. So what we've done is then Corporation Council put together a training across all streams and the law on the basis of all streams for the hearing officers, and has done that for each one that is currently sitting. And so all 6 of these ones that are now currently sitting have been trained by Corp Council on anti-blight, residential licensing, and housing code, and kind of the ordinance requirements of each of those, and like what they need to, and how the statute and ordinance interact and what they need to assess.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alder Ponzo. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. A question regarding the platform. Will residents be able to go on this platform to pay for their licensing, to schedule an appointment if it's due, and do all the business online versus, filling out a paper, mailing it, and trusting that system?
Yes, part of this is, for this part to the public facing is already in effect. So you can register your red license right online through the BoC platform, and it goes right to us, and then we'll electronically communicate with you to schedule the inspection. You can also make, and we get these regularly, housing code complaints, anti-blight complaints through the platform as well. So if you go to our website, it's been updated. There's on the very first page, there's those 3 areas, and you want to do either one of those things, you can click and you go right to the platform then. And then you get automatic email updates when the case moves along. So you see when it moves to issuing an order letter, you get an email that says, order letter was issued in this case, or inspector is going out for re-inspection in this case on that date. That's happening now. It will be much more like visual and directly interactive once we launch the public page.
And just to reiterate, you said it is online now, so if people went to the City of New Haven LCI department, they'll be able to access this information.
The one thing that people do not like, and the only part that we're having a little, it's not just pushback that they choose to do something different, is when you want to pay online, because it's, they charge a little fee. Because it's used electronic payment. So because we go through Stripe or different service providers who process the payment, so it's like a 3% fee. For most people, it's not a big deal, like the lower level things, but the properties that have like a number of apartments, that fee then becomes like quite big. So like, I think the Corsair, like, did everything online and then came downtown with the check. But they could do everything else online.
Well, since you mentioned that, where would people go to pay? The Corsair folks, where would they go? Would they come to your department? Would they go to the?
They would come to our department, and then because we want to register it internally, and then we put it over to process.
And are there certain hours of operation for that, or is the department available 9 to 5?
Yeah, this actually became an issue. You're clued on to an actual issue. They mailed it in, and they mailed it to accounting. So it took us some time to recover the check. It would be our normal working hours. Any of our normal working hours, someone from our residential licensing team could attend to them. And so 9 to 5, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and 10 to 5 on Wednesday, just because we have staff meeting the first time.
Okay, so it is open every day. Yep. Okay, thank you for that. The other question I have is regarding blight. As far as, when blight is blight on a property that is in foreclosure with, let's say, partial development, incomplete for years, and now it sits there, goes into foreclosure. I believe fines are implied, but when does the city and the bank finally say enough is enough?
Mm-hmm. If it is just purely in foreclosure and owned by the bank, even if it's just an idea of development, but there's no like real plan, I think we would proceed then. We have no problem proceeding against the bank. They are obligated to maintain the properties as well as anyone else. They are now the official owner. They should be doing this. When there is a development plan that another department is interested in, we try to take that into account and be kind of have a holistic city approach to it. And so we don't want to like step on the toes of if there are other areas of the city that are really actively working with a partner to develop something. So we try to collect that information and then contact the other departments that are working on it. But I'm of the mind that like if it's in blight and that no one is responding and fixing up the things, we should be proceeding with enforcement. Like it affects the neighbors, it affects the neighborhood, it affects our commercial corridors or our residential corridors, depending on where the blight is. And so it's all of our obligation to just keep that up, even when we're getting to, even if we have dreams of developing, like we still need to keep it in like a fair and condition to all the rest of our neighbors.
And what if it's a combination of that? What if the development has begun? I guess I'm trying to figure out when would the city come in to those developers that know how to play the game with the bank. Like, and the property might even be for sale, and you make an offer, but the seller declines it and says to the bank, I was, you can keep me in foreclosure, but it wasn't enough. It's not my asking price. I mean, it's just, it gets, I don't know, it's blight, but it's owned and they're being fined, let's say, hypothetically, or not. When does the city just finally say?
I think,
Alder, if there's a particular property you're thinking of, you should take it up with the LCI director offline. Because this is starting to stray away from the actual budget.
Yeah, and well, it doesn't because we have to collect these fines too, and how are those collected?
oh yeah, so I wasn't thinking that this is related to specific property, but I might, yeah.
And I will.
Yep, totally fine. I might have an idea of what you're talking about, but just as an idea, conceptually, right? I think we would just continue to enforce. Like I want everybody to know that we are not here to just like drop the hammer. We want to work with you, but if you're not working with us, we want this cleaned up, like it affects. And so, but then the way it gets there is really hard because the ultimate way, if they don't respond to our assessments, and there's certain landlords across the city right now who don't seem to be like their operations are functioning well, so they're getting all sorts of assessments signed by hearing officers, and they're not responding to that. So the next step would be to foreclose. I think I'm going to drop the note in here that is also one of our goals too. Not that we're looking to foreclose on lots of people, but there is a point where like things get really egregious. We should foreclose on some of these properties. But that we can only do that if we don't want it to go to free open sale and the bad actor reclaim it. Once we have a fine that's high enough that that is bigger than the value of the property. Pitch for our changes to the ordinance. If we update the ordinance to what the state statute allows, we could do that with a little faster on some certain potential commercial properties beyond a certain size, which I think would address a lot of these issues. But a number of them are proceeding. They're proceeding, and then that is our plan. We see a number of these that are just like stuck in a level of disrepair or partial development and have things coming out of the ground, but nothing else has happened. When the fine gets up far enough, if nothing has moved, our plan would be to foreclose and to then put it up to other parties who could do something with it.
Okay, thank you. I think that does it for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Costa. Further questions from colleagues for our director of LCI? Seeing none, we thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Alders. Appreciate it.
So we're going to take a 5-minute comfort break so that we can come back refreshed and concentrated for our star department at the end of this evening's proceedings, the Board of Education. Colleagues, 5 minutes. I'm serious about that. All set? Okay. So this meeting is back to order, and we are now at the final budgetary presentation for this evening. It's from the New Haven Board of Education. We invite the presenters to come forward. It looks like we have 6 seats here at the table. Look forward to seeing your team. It looks like you might have information to distribute, so we'll do that first. Just take a moment to get that paperwork. Okay, it's a binder and there's some over there as well. There's another staff person to help get that started.
I'm not going through that binder, so just, you know.
Thank you. Yes.
Colleagues, does everybody have a stapled deck plus a spiral bounded booklet? Wonderful. Okay. Names and addresses for the record, please.
Dr. Madeline Negron, 70 Cabot Street, New Haven, Connecticut.
Linda Hammonds, 210 Osborne Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
And Christine Bourne, 17 Red Orange Road, Middletown.
Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Okay. So good evening. I know you've had a long day. We are your last group to come here and present. Before we do that, I just want to start by saying thank you. Saying thank you to you, saying thank you to the entire New Haven Board of Alders. We recognize your ongoing support over the past 5 years. You've increased the local contribution to the New Haven Public Schools by over 50%. So we see it and we appreciate it, and I wanted to open up with that. So with me today, I have our Chief Financial Officer, Linda Hammonds, and also our Budget Director, Christine Bourne, and we're going to be the ones walking you through the presentation. First, I want to say that the main goal in going through this budget process this year is that I wanted to make it extremely transparent and try to show you a budget that reflects the true cost of operating the New Haven Public Schools.
Dr. Negron, I see that this presentation also has page numbers, so if you would just
Yes.
let us know what page you're on,
Sure.
we'd be glad to follow along.
So that was page 2. On page 3, I'm again reminding you of when we talk about New Haven Public Schools, exactly who are we. So you have a snapshot here of the unofficial student enrollment that we took back on October 1st. I want to call your attention to the last row. I believe that that's the row that pretty much highlights the high level of need of the student population that we are servicing. On page number 4, taking a moment just to share our historical trends as it relates to our enrollment. You will see that enrollment has been declining since 2017. And on page 5 is where I would like to spend a little bit more time. So with the limited funding that we have had over the years, with that support that you have been able to provide, with the years of the Art Extra dollars, wanted to give you a little insight into the learning experiences that we have been able to provide our students. Of course, we always start with our core academics. So that is or literacy or ELA or math or science or STEM or social studies, the wide range of world languages that we have been able to offer our students, as well as the fact that we provide a performing and visual arts program, as well as health and physical education. So that's usually what we tend to call our core academic program. But in addition to that, we also have a well-developed continuum to support our students with disabilities as well as our students who are multilingual learners. And here I have listed for you the program models that are currently in existence, again, to support our students identify as special education and students identify as multilingual learners. We also know that our students learn at different speeds, right? Not one child is the same as another, even if you have more than one kid yourself. They're just different and unique. So we don't just say that we're going to support half of the child and say, okay, we're going to support their academic needs and forget everything else. So that is why we have paid attention to ensure that we are bringing them the support as it relates to what we call interventions, both on the academic side and on the behavioral side. So I've given you some examples of what those supports look like in terms of staffing. We also tend to the whole child, and by that it means that we have invested over the years in the social and emotional supports. And again, here you see the type of staffing that it requires to be able, again, to address the social emotional needs of children. We pride ourselves in the fact that we have been doing a lot to ensure that we can engage our kids in what they're learning. We can make connections to what it is that they want to do when they graduate. And that is why we have deepened our college and career pathways. We have made significant investments in increasing our advanced coursework by offering our students both dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment in AP courses, meaning that while they're in high school, they're also earning college credit. We have also invested quite heavily in deepening our career pathways. I should remind you, right, last year we did the ribbon cutting over at the BioLab, 101 College Street. You all are very familiar with our award-winning culinary program. We have continued to support that program. We have our business program. We're also growing our own in terms of educators by having that education pathway. So getting more of our kids to be interested in the profession and being able to support them so that they can go into the field. And expanding our health careers through the partnerships that we have with Yale Hospital and others, in the support that we have been getting, for example, from the Greater New Haven Chamber. And just a few weeks ago, you may recall that we were able to open the state-of-the-art manufacturing lab that opened up at Hill House that is now supporting the students that are in that pathway from Hill House, Cross, and Korea. So again, a lot of investments are happening there, also ensuring that that our kids are able to get industry certifications and opportunities for internships, so that there may be kids that when they leave us, because of the rigorous programming that they have received in the hands-on experience, that they could actually go into top-paying jobs if they decided to do that. And of course, New Haven is known for our athletic programming. But year after year, we continue to see our athletes
performing at a high level and being recognized. We also have been able to offer a middle school program, even though it's not as extensive as our high school program. It has been something that we have been able to do. Here I have listed for you both those middle school athletics on the left, as well as the athletics that are available at the high school level. And last but not least, significant investments that have been put in place to continue to address student attendance, as well as chronic absenteeism. And like any educational organization, we have to invest in our own learning so that everybody in the organization can continue to learn the best strategies so that we could be ahead of the game and being able to provide for students the best. So I wanted to say that because all of the dollars that we invest in education, that is where it's going. That is the type of programming that we have been able to give our students, and that we were able to do a lot during the years of our best serve, and when we were at a place where the grants, there were many grants that were available, and we went after those. In the next slide, in this budget process this year, I took it as an opportunity to educate the public for them to fully understand how it is that public schools are funded in our state. And reminding folks that it starts with our educational cost sharing formula that, again, Connecticut began to take a look at it back in 2018-19. And I believe it was in, 1989, 1990 was when the concept of the ECS formula began, right? And in the last few years, there was a whole phase-in approach to try to get fully funding it. And finally, right, we're getting at the stage of fully funding that ECS formula. But the problem with that is that I'm reminding people that that formula is based on that foundational amount that was identified many, many, many years ago, when it was believed that you could educate a student and you put a cost of $11,525. And we know, like with everything else, right, what we were able to do 15, 20 years ago probably cost you a lot less than if you were doing the same today. And that formula, many years after, that now is fully funded, is antiquated because it doesn't reflect the needs over times now. And I've explained to the public, there is the foundation, here are the weights, this is how you get added percentages depending on the percentage of students that you have, whether they are coming from low-income families, or whether they are multilingual learners, or whether they are living in concentrated poverty. So through this process, I've been doing a lot to make sure that the public fully understands, so that they know that there's one percentage that comes, and that's it. The rest of it is all too local to then be able to fund public education. And often when that formula is flawed, which is my argument, it puts the burden now on the local taxpayer. And when you get to a situation like ours in Connecticut, where you have the haves and the have-nots, it's going to be more of a strain in communities like ours. So going back to the ECS on slide 7, now you see where we are in 2026, that we are, again, we are going to be getting an additional 1.9 that is going to come as part of that formula. And the 1.9 is going to come via the Alliance grant, meaning that it has to go be a complete pass-through to the education, to the public school district where the rest of the money comes through cities, right, and then it passes through. So we're getting, all of that to say, we're getting a 1.9 increase finally on our ECS, now that they're aiming to fully fund it. In the next slide, what you see is that, so we have ECS, we also then depend on grants. And you see here the trend over the years. We had that big spike, as you see in 2020, 21, 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24. All of that was ARPESA, right? That was the pandemic. All of that is now gone. So what we are anticipating now in grants is 84.7. On slide 9, here's another way for you to take a look at the grants, and it's showing you where we were in 23, 24. On the left, you have the different types of grants that we get. So for example, you have here things like IDEA, Perkins, Title II. You have Head Start. You have, the grants that we went after for manufacturing project. And then at the bottom, you see ESSER and ARP-ESSER. At the bottom, then you see, when you take a look at the last two rows, you see that in 24-25, this current year, that was the amount that we had available in grants, 107 million. That is going to be drastically reduced now for next year, right, as it was referenced in the previous page, to that $84.7 million. So, all of that was to kind of give you context, tell you where it is that the funds are coming. But now I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer to sort of walk you through the budget now that we are looking at.
Good evening. So if you look on page 10, it shows you the revenue assumptions. So what we've done is for the last 5 years, we tried to show you across the board where we are. When you look at the local contributions, I wanted to make one point, and that is that the number does not reflect taxes by no means. But what happens is that it's showing you the difference between the ECS minus our proposed budget. The number will be adjusted once the board and we get actual numbers for where we have to put our budget together. So basically, this is just a snapshot in time of revenue and where we've been going. And as you can see on line 2, you see the ECS Alliance grant, as Dr. Negron mentioned earlier. You can see where education cost sharing has been stable across the board, and any increases that we show would be in line 2, which is the ECS Alliance grant itself. Let's see. On page 11 is just a projection summary of the 25-26 budget. We were charged this year with putting in everything that we needed to run the district. Previously, we would put the budgets together, and we wouldn't include, they wouldn't include vacancies or things like that, or new programs. So what we did was we put when we started out in 24-25, and then we had 24-25 approved, and as you can see, coming right out of the gate, we had $11.8 million difference. When we did the 24-25 budget now, we're looking at 25-26 requests. The first request was with nothing new, no vacancies, nothing was in that number, and we came up with, we needed $16.9 million. Then what we also did was the board, we were instructed by the board to just put everything and show us the true budget that you guys really need to operate. So that's where you'll see where the number, the 23 keeps showing up and folks have been talking about. That number includes all vacancies, no new programs, but just all vacancies. And on page 12, what we've done is we've shown you the actual request, the 25-26, the actual request with staff, and then the actual request with all costs, including vacancy. So it was what I explained in the previous page, but you can see where the differences are. So one request would have been 8.14% increase, and the other with vacancies would be 11.15%. And on page 13, a lot of times we get asked when you look at our budget, what's in your numbers? So what we decided to do this fiscal year was to say, okay, fine, let's put some categories out there and then try to give you a description of the categories, what are in those budget lines. And so that's what this page is. It's just a snapshot showing you, if you looked at the substitute line, you say, okay, what's in there? If you looked at overtime and benefits, you could see what makes up the numbers in those lines. And that was on page 13. On page 14, we went into, once we got all the numbers together, we went into, well, what are the notable cost drivers that, keep these numbers going the way they're going? So as you can see, 84.3% of the general fund costs are in personnel, out of district tuition and transportation. We have a lot of, bargaining units, some with the city and some with just the Department of Education. So what we did here is we just said, okay, fine, we gave you the 4 largest bargaining units and what those percentage increases will be for 25-26. We are still in negotiations with the parent union. Well, I think we're in arbitration now, but the powers have still not has not been negotiated. So we couldn't put a number. We're thinking maybe 2 or 3, but we couldn't put a number in there. All other salary changes are negotiated as well. Our transportation contract renewal for 25-26, we anticipate a 2% increase. And then there are other price escalations, which are spelled out in our long-term agreements and our contracts, which are building maintenance and tuition. These basically are costs that, while we can negotiate them, a lot of times we don't have that much control over it because, no one wants to come in and say, well, you're going to negotiate. Can you negotiate a contract less than you have last year, but you want us to continue the services and provide more? And then also we have the state regulations for our charter schools, which we're projecting for this fiscal 25-26 of 3.6%. And those figures, unfortunately, are non-negotiable.
In the next slide, I just wanted to talk to you because when I first met you, I told you that I would come in and I would do my due diligence in looking at everything to see where I could possibly find some efficiencies. So over the last year and a half, these are some of the efforts that we've done. We took an opportunity that we had to reapply for some of our grants related to early childhood. We did a restructure. Reduce a position there that we found inefficiencies. We also, last summer, took a close look at our summer school programming. We were able to reduce that from $4 million to $2 million. We also did a cut last year and this year as it relates to after school and spring break activities. We were able to reduce our substitute teacher line by $1 million. We took some of our vacant positions in support services and eliminated those 9. We also reduced contract services by $350. And last year I did a lot of work right sizing at the elementary level, meaning taking a look to see how many kids do I have per school, per classroom, where there are opportunities to combine and still be within the contract so that we could at least maximize in ensuring that we had a teacher in front of every student. And that ended up saving $1.1 million as a result of those positions. This year now, I wanted to tell you that when people talk about losing sleep, yes, I have been losing sleep because I keep thinking about, where is it that we find $23.2 million? Because that is currently the gap that we are projecting for next year. You heard me talk about the programming that we have been able to provide to our children, the programming that I am trying to be able to retain for our kids. The reality is that I gotta find $23.2 million. You've heard from the mayor's, in the mayor's proposed budget, that he has expressed a desire to have 5 million go into an increase to the education budget. So if that were to happen, then I can minus say that 5 million from that 23.2 if that were to be approved. The Appropriations Committee a few weeks ago talked about increasing the dollars that could go into the excess cost grant. And again, that's the grant that allows for you to have reimbursement in terms of the costs that you use to support students who are getting like specialized services under special education. So they put money into that, and if that goes through, right, that would mean that we would get an increase of 1.7. Just, I believe it was last night, they met and the appropriations said, okay, we want to put more in there. And they were talking about putting another, I think it was 240 or 214 million. If that were to happen, it would mean that instead of that 1.7, we would actually get 3.6. I personally highly doubt that the 3.6 will come about, because that basically, my understanding would be like going and loosening the guardrails, which we have heard the governor say over and over that he's not willing to do that. Even though multiple stakeholders, bipartisan, everybody saying we need to loosen them. So here showing you where we could get that 1.7, maybe more optimistic about that 1.7, or hey, there could be some kind of a miracle and we get the 3.6. If that happens, then if we do our math, I am still short. I'm either going to be short $16.5 million or I'm going to be short $14.6 million. So then I have to say, okay, where do I find it? Where do I find it? So we have spent months looking at everything, doing the math. So we're saying, okay, we looked at every contract and we're saying, okay, we could probably find $1.5 million there, be able to reduce our contracts. We looked at all of the vacancies and said, which of these vacancies could we kind of do without seriously impacting everything? And there are 42 vacancies in there that we're saying, okay, if we have to, we don't want to, but if we have to, at least we can start there. And that would result in $2 million. But then from there, like it gets really difficult, right? Because now we're talking about people, we're talking about programming. That's when it gets serious, because now if I'm still chasing about $13 million at this point. So this would be like drastic, and I want to reiterate that. This would be like decimating our programming. We're talking about $9.35 million if we were to cut 129 FTEs. That would have to be, I said, okay, let me cut a quarter of the arcs. If I cut a quarter of the arcs, that's 29 positions. We're working on raising our academic achievement. You have heard me, if you're sitting in the education committee, you have heard us here with our assistant superintendent, Rick Hannon, bring you the data to say, hey, we're trending in the right direction. We're investing these dollars, this support on intervention and the support that we're bringing to our teachers. we're heading in the right direction. But this would mean, okay, I'm gonna have to cut that. Cut literacy coaches, cut math coaches, cut our magnet coaches that support our magnet teams to strengthen things, cut our library media specialists, cut support staff, cut management, cut clerical. That gives me 9.35. And again, the impact of that is severe. Then I'm saying, what else can I cut? If I'm gonna cut after school programming, that means less buildings that have to stay open late. I can then cut my overtime that I have to pay on security and custodian. So that's how I'm getting those numbers. Cut part-time salaries, cut middle school athletics, and I've been intentional about school consolidations. You've heard me talk about that. You want to close another building? I don't recommend it. We're talking now, we're in May, but if you want to close another building, we've done the analysis. It'll be disruptive this late, and all we're going to get from it is about $670,000 from a disrupted school closure. That's the impact that we have. I feel like I'm doing my due diligence to continue to advocate at the state level, and I'm advocating and pleading to the governor at this point to say, if you could just loosen those guardrails, and even if you were just to add a weight into that antiquated formula to account for special education children, because ECS just gives us for the most severe, that we usually pay probably 4 times what we pay for a regular special education child. If you were just to add special ed into that formula, the whole state wins, and we're all struggling financially, and that would mean we would probably get anywhere from $10 to $12 million. That allows me to close that gap significantly without decimating our programming. The other would be, which is, I know how it is to say to you, could we have a larger local contribution? And I know that that's tough, because already you are hopefully going to support that 5 million. I don't know how much more city could do in terms of local, right? So that is why I'm putting my energy into pleading with the state. I'm going to remain optimistic, but I hear that the governor is not budgeting. So I will just continue to try to unpack the reality of what this shortage means for us here in New Haven. With that, I will turn it over back to, actually, let's keep going. This is just giving you an idea of all the different things that we did through the budget process, so that you have the actions that we took, when those were completed. Today we're here, like, presenting it to you, and then we have to wait to see exactly where we're going to end up in May. The longer we wait, the longer we know exactly what we're getting, the more crazy it'll be if we do have to go into the layoffs, because I don't see how else we do that. Also reminding everyone that we also know that we're living at a time right now that everything changes from one day to the next. We don't know what's going to come out of Washington. Depending on how our president is feeling one day to the next, it could be something completely different. So that's something that we continue to keep an eye on. We also know that it all depends on enrollment, right? So we draw a lot of students from all over the region through our amazing magnet program, right? Based on the enrollment of those students, it determines, right, what we're going to get into that inter-district grant. So if that enrollment significantly declines, that means the grant also declines. There's also wonderful mandates that tend to come from the state about great things that we should be doing in public school. But often the great things we all agree, but they do not come with the funds attached to say, now go do it. It's like you have to do it and then figure out how you're going to fund it. So we don't know what's gonna come there. We all know that we're dealing, again, in an area of increased costs to healthcare and other benefits. We're all dealing with inflation, especially now with all these tariffs that everything is going up. The cost of special education continues to rise. And you also know that at the same time, we're trying to navigate for capital dollars to do the much needed improvement that needs to happen to our infrastructure. So that is what we don't know. So again, final thoughts. I want to say thank you again for your ongoing support. But again, I wanted to be extremely honest with the entire community around what it is that we are facing. And with that, I open it up for questions. The rest of my team is here with me tonight because we have all been working in this process.
Thank you very much, Dr. McGraw. Before we proceed with questions from committee members, is there anything that you or your team would like to say about the $15 million in capital spending that's proposed, the project related to the BoA debt?
So I know that that's also a decrease from us, because I know that in the last allocation, I think we had 60%. So there was a reduction there, right? So we know that with that 15, we have to make do for the next 2 years. And you know the scope of our need and our projects. Just last night, we came before the Education Committee to talk about some, we want to take advantage of the school construction program. We haven't done that in a while. And we are rushing to get an application in, for example, to support with repairs that we need to do on roofs and pools. So again, to answer your question, we're grateful, but we know that's not going to be enough because the magnitude, again, of our facilities far exceeds that also.
Thank you for that response to my question. And anything else from your team? Seeing none, we'll proceed to questions from colleagues. Thank you for your presentation. I see Alder Flowers and Pam.
Thank you.
So,
the last couple of years, 2 schools have been closed. Why are we not selling those properties? And would it be an advantage for you to sell the properties?
So the answer to that question would be that, one, I don't have authority to sell it, but what we are looking at, to your point, for example, we have 2 that have been closed for a long time, and in conversations to say that this may be the time to say, hey, let's surplus those back to the city. So all we do is surplus it to you, and then you city decide what you do with it. We're hoping that when we do that, that if you were to sell it, that hopefully some of that could come back to support education so that we can continue to work on renovations to the other buildings. But again, it's not like we can sell and then we control the funds. That doesn't happen. But we are exploring being ready to surplus some of our vacant buildings because even that has cost, even though they're empty,
yes,
we're still paying for the electricity, right? That has to go into that space. So we're getting ready to move in that direction.
Okay, that's good news. I'm happy to hear that because a lot of city residents question the fact that we had a couple school closings, but yet nothing's happening with those properties. And I have one in particular that's been closed for the last 4 years. So it's just decaying basically at this point. So it would be nice to be able to put it up back on the tax rolls. And like you said, if they do sell it, that money could be brought back to the Board of Ed in a different manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Ferraro Santana. Alder Furlow, and then Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Good evening. This is a tough evening. There's nothing more important that I can think of than the future of our young people, especially in an inner city where education is paramount to their success in life. But what I would like to know, and I'm probably gonna have 100 questions, but I can't do it tonight because we're just getting this information. And I need to really read this a few times because there's a lot of numbers in this. But I'd like to know that at the beginning of last year, when you came before us, the district started with a deficit. What was that deficit? Actually, that doesn't matter. I think what does matter is what has been done to reduce that deficit from last year.
So I would point out to those mitigation efforts that I named here with all the cuts that we were doing to try to find some savings.
How much do you think that was?
And then also
To better form that question.
Started out at 11.8, and I think we're down now to maybe 4.
From
Reduced it, yeah.
and now it's up again to what's the deficit now that the gap that needs to be filled?
25, 26.
23.2.
Yeah.
Is the gap. Okay, and then you mentioned the disruptive school closures. Disruptive meaning that it will be disruptive to the students to have schools closed?
Disruptive meaning that, for example, when I spoke about the merger that we're going to do,
At Wexler.
that took time to plan, look at numbers, look at everything, engage people that we're doing now in design, so that we do things with community.
But that wasn't really a school closure, right?
That was a merger.
It's a merger.
Right, that was a
That's a little
merger.
different.
But you're talking now, if we were going to close, I call it disruptive, because it means now, almost May, to say, okay, your school's gonna close. Now I gotta figure out, lottery's over, where am I putting all these kids that I'm gonna have to move all over, right? And at the end of the day, right, okay, we can do that, go through that pain right now and get the 600 and whatever number out there.
670. So is that just for one school?
One school, because don't forget that when you close it, if I send the kid somewhere else, I can't exceed a class of 26 at K2 level or 27 at 312. So if I'm over capacity, that means it's not like I can lay off that teacher and save that money. No, I gotta carry that salary because I still need the teacher. All I'm saving in essence would be maybe the transportation, because no more do I need to go into that particular school, maybe, right? I'm going to save maybe on the custodian, because I don't need to have a custodian there. I'm going to save on the security, because I don't need to have a security there. I'm going to save on the administrator in that building, the assistant principal if they have one, right? But in terms of the staff, probably a handful, not all of them, because the bulk of them I'm still going to need to be able to have the students in different buildings.
How many schools do you think would qualify to be closed? If you decide
Right now, I looked at numbers, you probably have one. Right now, if we were to do something this drastic, one. And if you want to get it really, really crazy, maybe a second one.
We want to get crazy because this is $23 million gap that we have to try to figure out. I'm not suggesting necessarily for school closing, but I am suggesting that something radical needs to be done because this is just not sustainable.
And I am with you, and I hope you see that I'm making progress, right? Starting with the merger, I have intents to close, but there's a process by which we close schools. You just can't close schools overnight. And
I
say,
understand,
and say to
but
parents,
we
like,
talked about
figure
this
it
in our
out.
last budget meeting last year.
And it takes time to do that with all the, look how long it took me to do the analysis of the merger.
Okay, and I have just two other questions very quickly. And I'm not being combative.
I know you're not, and I love your
care about our
questions.
children, but I'm just
And I
trying to.
love your questions because it's allowing me to be able to put it out there so people understand how complex all of this is.
The thing that I was concerned about when I saw the possible projected impact is a 1.2 million in custodial services. And I'm thinking, holy cow, we got mold, we got ceilings falling in. That's just not possible to cut custodial. I mean, or we're gonna be in a worse condition. But I do wanna go back. And
I'm sorry,
Yep.
overtime, right?
Oh, that's overtime.
Overtime.
Did I miss that part?
Because to your point, I still need my custodians, we gotta do better. I need more custodians, not less custodians.
I don't know that we need to cut overtime.
But that's because, right, if I cut the after-school program, I don't need them then after hours. That's where I'm getting
Except to clean the mold up.
That's where I'm getting the 1.2 from.
And I won't take the time because I know there's other questions, but I probably will need to circle back because I'm just a little confused with how the weights are formulated, because even with the Alliance grant, it looks like we're getting money that is, we have our multilingual English learners, so that is bringing money to our district. We have money coming in because of low income. And so I'm just kind of wondering, where is this gap with the Alliance part? And I'm not sure that we're really calculating it right with what it can be used for. And I may not be quite, well.
It's not sure I understand the question.
So I'm gonna throw this out there, and I know that there's 10 others that may follow through with it, and I may just need to sit down and maybe talk a little bit more about this, but I've just been taking some notes because I've been preparing for this meeting as superintendent and Dr. Negron, and so I'm just concerned that though we're asking the state for more money, if I think about it like this, I drive a sedan. I need an SUV. I really need one. I have a dog. I can't travel with him in my car. I can't afford it. So I have to figure out how to operate within the means of what I currently have. And what's coming in and what's being presented seems to be a Range Rover compared to, I know it's needed, I get it. But we're giving an amount of money and it is far beyond what we've been allocating. And this is just very concerning.
And I love your analogy because I'm going to give you another analogy, right? I'm being asked to provide a steak meal when I'm only being given the resources to give you a burger. What we are operating with in New Haven right now, and I'm proud of what we're able to do with the little funds that we have. I don't know that people fully understand the cost that it takes to do this type of programming and what it goes into it. And we're not splurging. I would argue with you that we don't have the, what did you say, the Land Rover? Was it the Land Rover? We don't have the Land Rover. We don't have it. I wish we could give our kids the Land Rover. I wish we could give our kids the experience that a kid in Greenwich gets. And I'm using Greenwich purposely.
I did see their numbers, and I couldn't find for 24, 25, what we're spending per student.
And actually, I have a chart, I can email it to you, because we did put it in a previous presentation, that it will give you, we put all of our surrounding towns, so you could see how we range in what we spend per pupil.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that will be.
So noted.
We have, so I'm happy to send it to you.
And I think with that, I'll yield. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Next will be Alder Honda Smith, and then the queue's open.
Thank you. I believe Alder Furlow asked a lot of questions in which I wanted to ask, but I do have one, maybe two questions to ask. I hear of all of these different people that you're saying that you're gonna have to reduce costs by cutting positions. Did you ever think about cutting positions in central office?
We have cut positions in central office. I also want to remind the public, because usually the public wants to go immediately to central office. You can't run a district without a central office. Especially us, we are the second largest district in our state. So we need the positions that we have. And even there, I don't believe we are splurging when we consider other places. Right? We're trying to be efficient with what we're asking for. So for example, when I tell you that, even when I just look at my cabinet, right? I need my COO that we're still looking for. I need my CFO, right? Ms. Hammonds is going to be retiring at the end of the year. She'll be greatly missed. But it doesn't mean that, okay, let me save money there. I won't have a CFO. I have been struggling without a chief of staff that I desperately need. Those are things that are needed to run an organization and to run it well.
Okay, I understand that, but the kids also need teachers.
Yes.
Right? And I think the most important thing that we really need to look at is making sure that we have plenty enough teachers so that these kids can learn language arts, math, STEM, everything in which that you talked about, and for these teachers to be in these classrooms. By cutting these positions, you're cutting education, the kids for the right to learn. And I would think personally that cutting some of those staff members that you have will help the kids to increase their learning also, to have enough teachers so that they can learn. But that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Mazon.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Next on the queue is Alder Festa, and then the queue is open.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Superintendent and staff, for your presentation. While we're on the topic of central office cuts, how about non-school, non-student facing positions?
So we don't have many that are non-student facing. I mean, what do we have left that is non-student facing? Everything we have right now is student facing. Because of the years everything has been cut. I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm trying to name right now, like, what could be a non-student facing. Maybe like, okay, if I think about a supervisor of reading, maybe, right? But then again, like, we're gonna operate with a supervisor of reading, the person that's guiding the programming and supporting our teachers so that we can actually teach reading, because it all trickles down. I mean, that's the only, right now, non-student facing that I can think of.
I mean, these are the positions that, you know, we should be looking at versus cuts in the classroom.
And again, but I would argue that for people that are in the field, they will understand that although it appears that you can still run without those critical central office positions, it's not doable. It's not doable. Not that I've seen it.
I mean, looking at the charts, it looks like, you know, each year we have a decline in student population, and people will say, oh, with all that development going on in New Haven, I would think that there would be an increase, but these developments don't have families. A lot of them don't, or if they do, it's very few families. So do we have, maybe this goes hand in hand with my colleague earlier questioned about, do we have data or census numbers of where school populations lie? So we have areas of development where there's not a lot of kids, but maybe, and I'm just hypothetically speaking here, maybe 2 schools. But there might be a population based on, the census that shows numbers are greater with student age kids in this population. Do we have any data with
The data, the enrollment data that we have is the data that was used in the last facility study. But it wasn't, to your point, like, it just gave the overall projected enrollment for the future. But it didn't say, like, in this particular side of the city, we're projecting this number, in this side, we're projecting this number. It was just an overall number for the city.
Okay, so we don't have like census numbers of the school population and where those schools might be, that would affect that population.
That I have in my hands, no, that it's probably available, but I don't have it in my hands.
I mean, that might be something we need to look at regarding, possibly what my colleague was saying about more consolidation, et cetera, seeing where the student population is in the city versus, there might be some parts that are more populated than others. We've been giving funding, this isn't your first time in front of us. We've been giving funding throughout the year for certain programs, et cetera. How have those programs helped and benefited our kids?
Great, right? I recall the presentation again that I brought forth where we were looking at even the impact, right? When I talked about the investments around college and career, we mapped out like how much money we were able to save families in terms of the college credit that kids were able to get while in the system because of the investments that were made inside of that particular program. That's just an example.
Yeah, no, and I get that because a lot of our high schools offer college courses while the kids are going, so it saves families money down the road if their child decides to continue their education. But it's more, we've given ARPA funds, we've given, it might be too big of a question. And we could always talk offline about that one, but I mean, we have funded many things over the course of just even the last probably 6 months, 5 million surplus that we had of ARPA funds that we didn't need to balance last year's budget, an additional $3 million that was, if we need it. Looks like you needed it. Things like that. We have to remember all that funding that was also provided through us. But anyway, I briefly scanned through this. I didn't study. I only looked at enrollment numbers, not the school. And there are schools that have under less than 300 students in it, and it looks like it's a K. They might be even K through 8. I didn't look that closely because we just got this. But is there room for more consolidation? Is there, I know you said just consolidating those 2 schools, but just skimming through this, and I don't know if I looked at the numbers to those schools, but it looks like there might be room.
Right now, in terms of another merger, because we looked at that, like, could we then combine another 2 into 1, where they all go into 1? No, because there's actually no capacity that would allow, that one facility would allow for the combination. Because we did look at that, to say, could we do more than one merger? Like I said, there's a possibility for additional closures that with time we could do. In particularly, one that I think would be easier, and if I'm being honest, that's the one that we know we're planning for not this 25-26, but the 26-27, because that had been in the radar to be able to do all the work necessary to be able to do that particular closure. There's another one that because of the grade level configuration becomes a little more complex, but because of numbers, we should be looking at, and that's the one that we're also looking at.
Well, I guess that leads to then where are the ratios, the equity? You know, you have some schools that seem like they're over-enrolled and some schools that seem like they're under-enrolled. I know you mentioned that you want to contain the classroom size to 25, 26 students. But when you have this excess of, this school has overcapacity, this school has, where's the equity, where are the ratios?
And we're trying to balance that out. So one example that I can give you of something that we did this year, we knew, for example, that Fairhaven was busting at the seams. It was so many different programmings all inside of Fairhaven School. So we took advantage of the fact that Clinton Ave, the facility, had capacity, and we moved, like we literally moved one program out of Fairhaven and we put it into Clinton Ave. And that was something that we did that actually ran this year. So we're always looking at those opportunities, to your point, to be able to balance things out. And also, just so that you're aware, smaller schools usually cost you more to run than a bigger school.
Okay, I'm gonna change direction a little bit and go back to properties, because we do have empty buildings as we were talking about. There's the Worcester Place building. We invested $1 million to rehab that place that is used for basically offices. Why aren't we doing something with that building? And why are we spending $1 million to rehab a place that's not gonna see students? That $1 million could have gone towards the classroom, could have gone towards this budget. So I'm finding, and actually it's constituents who brought it to my attention, residents. You know, and I happened to be around there and I peeked in. You know, what is the purpose of that? I mean, that $1 million could have been used to lower your budget, that $1 million more.
My understanding of that, because again, that happened before my arrival, but my understanding is that that was part of the long-standing intent to be able to get out of 54 Meadow. And that there's been a desire, little by little, to try to funnel and eventually get out of there, being that that could potentially be like prime real estate that could be sold and hopefully draw in, again, more money that could again support operations in the future.
And what happened to that plan?
I know that we have a team now that's inside of that building, so we were able to move that. Just yesterday, one of the construction projects that we're going after is to be able to apply to see if it's possible for 54 Meadow to move into 424 Chapel where the health department is.
Okay, but that's not Worcester Place.
No, because I already have a team there, right? So we have to find.
So you need two places.
That space only has.
No, I know, it's a very small space. I'm very familiar with that space. It's small, that's why, you know, so you have some staff working at, what is it, 21 Worcester Place? Yes. And the future is to possibly move 54 Meadow to Chapel Street.
To eventually move, right? The opportunity that we're looking at right now is the possibility of 424 Chapel.
although that's straying from my original question, which was dealing with Worcester Place and investing this money that could have been
I
used
just gave you my
otherwise,
best
but,
knowledge
yep,
of how that came about.
understood, yes, noted. I'm just gonna look here. You know what, I do have other questions, but I'll yield to colleagues, so thank you for your answers. I know this isn't easy, and our kids are the most important thing in the city, and we need to cherish them and take care of them. You know, the youth and the elderly is who I say we probably neglect the most. But we also can't take away what is helping our students. Athletics helps our students get off the streets. It's an after-school activity, as well as providing possible scholarships for students.
Alderfesta. Is there a question at the end of this?
I'm just saying that I don't agree in the budget that, you know, we need to look elsewhere because scholarships are helping students as well when it comes to sports. We saw it just the other night. Last night, I believe we have, you know, one of our kids that's going to be going to the NFL. I mean, he's an example for all the students in New Haven. But anyway.
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm done.
Okay. Questions? There will be times to make comments during our deliberations, but we need to stick with questions. Alder Morrison.
Thank you. So my question is just going back to the consolidations. I know we're all trying to put our heads together to figure out how can we find this money. And so I get the whole Wexler Lincoln Bassett situation. It just makes sense. But having these magnet schools, the various magnet schools, is that a barrier to your ability to consolidate? Because I know magnet schools have all these different rules and regulations, and if you did have capacity in the buildings, but if it's a magnet school, would that be a barrier? That, like you said, 25 students or 27 students in a classroom. Is that contractual?
Contractual.
For the
all of our schools, it's part of the teachers bargaining contract.
Okay, so but the magnet status has nothing to do with serving as a barrier, but it is the contracts of the teachers having a certain number of students in the classroom.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Further questions from colleagues for our superintendent and your team? Questions about the proposed budget for the Board of Education? I'm just going to confirm something that'll be very brief. The mayor has sent to us a budget that would allocate $213,262,784 for next fiscal year for the Board of Ed. That's what the mayor proposed. It includes an estimated $1.4 million of additional ECS money and $3.6 million more from us, or from the city of New Haven taxpayers. That's $5 million more than last year. That's what the mayor's proposed. That's what's technically before us.
Mm-hmm.
You want 231, but maybe you can make 225 work if you just don't fill any of your vacant positions. Have I understood that correctly? Okay, so you want 11.5, 11.6 million. Well, no, it's more like 18 million more than what the mayor has proposed, but maybe you could make 12 work. Yeah. So let's just be clear.
I think that's
what you're asking.
I think that's a fair assumption.
Okay. Not unless some crazy and wonderful thing happens at the state and suddenly there's $10 million that drops in our laps. We will all be very happy with that. But barring that, the request from the Board of Ed is for 231, but maybe you could make 225 work.
And I want to be also clear that to make that 225 work, I am still going to have to tap into.
Yes, all that list of cuts. Okay. Thank you for confirming that. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page about what's being asked.
Yes.
Any further questions? Alder Rosa for our superintendent.
Thank you, Mr.
If we
Chair.
could just, thank you.
I don't know if I may be missing something, but we put in another 5 million into your account. We transferred as ARPA funds. Is that included or is that separate?
That's separate, because that's capital
Okay, so you're gonna use that solely for
for
capital?
all the projects.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I
Yes.
understood. Thank you.
Indeed. Further questions? Seeing none, we thank you for waiting as long as you did and sticking it out and giving us a spirited discussion. We appreciate it. Thank
And
you.
again, I thank you for your ongoing support.
Okay. Well, colleagues, and members of the public, that concludes the final departmental budget presentation for this evening. The next meeting of the Finance Committee will be on Wednesday, April 30th. That's next week. It will begin with the third of 3 public hearings on the mayor's proposed budget. We'll also hear from the Community Services Administration. We'll hear updates from the Special Services Districts. And so that's what we're going to do next week. That's Wednesday, April 30th, here in Chambers at 6 p.m., starting off with the public hearing. I would just want to note for the record that there's follow-up that we're going to do. We're going to get clarity on what that Macy's subsidy is from the Economic Development Administration. We're going to follow up on the question of fees and permits for city plan and also for the building department, where those errors. We want a list of the hotels that the city works with when relocating people who are in times of distress. We want the per student expenditure comparison between our city and other districts. These are items that we will follow up on coming out of our meeting today. Do I hear a motion? Alder DeColo.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion of the motion to adjourn? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. We're adjourned.